Hello friends, it's Mo here. Before we get started with today's episode, I have a bit of a confession to make. I, like a complete newbie, managed to record the entire podcast using my webcam microphone instead of my much nicer microphone that I'm using right now. So, do I sound like a person sitting in the bottom of a bucket for the whole episode? I do. If you can listen to what I usually have to say, I don't think that this voice effect or lack of quality is really going to deter you. But apologies in advance for what it sounds like, and hopefully you can make it through, and you can bet your bottom dollar I'll be checking my mic inputs again for the next recording and for the rest of my life. So without any further ado, here's episode 78. Hello and welcome back to Blood and Ashes. This is episode 78. I'm your host Mo, and I'm joined once again by my wolf brothers Jody.
What we're going to do tonight, Brain?
And Willie.
Fine, take over the world, Pinky.
Yeah! That was unrehearsed to our listeners. I knew someone would get it.
Man, we're really making a mockery of this whole introduce the participants so that people know who's speaking or when idea.
They know us by now.
There's just three of us. They're not going to get lost.
It's not hard.
It's true. Oh, guys, I've created a real pickle for myself by reading ahead. Anyone that's been listening to the podcast thus far knows that that is not typically something that I do.
It's frowned upon in this community.
It is by me specifically. Like, I've always sort of like held true to that. But isn't it weird how it's the Path of Daggers, book one of the slog, that is the one that I can't put down. Like, I keep just wanting to go back to it and reading. And I mean, a big part of that is Egwene's arc, and I'm reading a lot of like her sort of her maneuverings with the Saladar Aes Sedai. But I'm not blazing ahead by any stretch of the imagination, but I am about 3/4 of the way through, and I've found this book thoroughly enjoyable.
You're enjoying the Wheel of Time? Bizarre.
I think this might be a carbon copy of our intro last week.
Just can't get over how much I like reading these books.
But yeah. I am shocked that book 8 specifically is one that I'm enjoying as much as I am. Even if it turns into a real dull mess after this, I will still have a better opinion of it after I'm done than I've held of it thus far.
All right, I am not ahead. No.
But are you enjoying it? Like, I mean, we like to pick on a pleasant ride, you know, that's quite a ridiculous chapter, but...
It has its moments in the sense that there is a lot of shit being spoken about by people.
For a change.
Very little moving of the legs and moving of things, doing like traveling and discovering and shit like that. No, a lot of talking.
No. Not a lot of action. I mean, again, last episode, massive explosion, battle with the Sean Chan, you know, like there was some very real capital A action in the last episode, but the sense I'm getting from this book thus far, certainly in the chapters we've covered thus far, and in the chapters to come, maneuvering, right? Like a lot of maneuvering, but it's not as obtuse as I've always thought it was. Like, you know, Willie, you keep bringing this up when we talk about like how at this time we're really going to try and enjoy things like Dice Mar and all that sort of stuff, and the political maneuvering. I remember it being kind of bland and boring, and it isn't. Like, I'm actually enjoying
there's
everything.
There's a tremendous
reading,
amount that happens. It's
yes.
I think you feel bogged down in the fact that you're physically not moving. We look at these chapters, and all of them are taking place during what we covered 2 episodes ago. So we still, for the last 3, including this one, recordings, dealing with the same moment in time. So it's, think about it. They use the bowl.
My chapter's 7 days
they
later.
use the bowl of the winds. And everyone during every perspective has a quick, weird change in the weather. All of a sudden it rained with no clouds.
But it was days later.
7 days.
Yeah. Perrin says more than half a week ago, the channelers sent a big channeling event. So, I mean, you're right, Willie, it is the immediate aftermath, but like the Windfinders told us, it actually takes a while for the weather to change. And we are seeing a change, and it's mentioned a lot, which is kind of cool. Yeah. It's actually, because of what the Windfinders said, I'm actually surprised, like you are, Willie, and how quickly it is actually happening. Like, we're going very quickly in the chapters I've read ahead of with Egwene. It's snowing and stuff. And there's mention of snow in these chapters, right? Like, not just rain and cold, but like actual snow. So, yeah, things are changing. But it is taking a couple of days, but also not weeks or months or anything like that. It is a lot of internal monologues, political maneuvering, a little sprinkle of Perrin and Berlane and Fail.
Oh, easy now.
Well. Hold, settle back. Let's not go there.
Yeah.
Not this early.
But all right. Let's get to it, right? Like, I mean, there's some really cool shit that happens in these chapters, and then some really great stuff. The stuff that really made me want to keep going with Egwene shortly after this. So, before we forge ahead, let's do a complete 180 and take a look directly behind us in everybody's favorite section called Callbacks. Okay, first I want to apologize to Chris Green. If you remember, Chris was the one that sent in some messages and also left a voice message last time. I was unable to effectively articulate my opinions about his Nynaeve braid block theory. So I'll do that now quickly, just to recap what my thoughts were. The one point I sort of danced around was that since Nynaeve's braid tugging started long before she knew that she could channel, the removal of her block alone would unlikely cause her to drop the habit, right? So the habit is linked to more general frustrations, and the block itself won't make her maybe necessarily consciously try to stop tugging her braid. And then the reference that Chris made to Elyas and Alliandre touching their knives as a mirror of Nynaeve's braid tugging actually would imply that removing her block would not stop her braid tugging, since Elyas and Alliandre are both now experienced channelers. Elyas especially, right? Years and years of being quite a powerful and prolific channeler, still stroking her knife. So, you know, if you apply that same rationale to Nynaeve, the removal of her block would not affect her sort of nervous habit or her tic. And then lastly, we, the three of us, had a great big chuckle outside of the episode recording at Chris's fantastic Seanchan accent, which is, you know, the Texan accent, and his fantastic delivery of the Empress May She Live Forever in that accent, and I thought that deserved more recognition. So here you go, Chris. Thanks for that. That really did tickle us, but it was off air. And then the last Chris Green related topic: did you guys pick an Aiel warrior society? As Chris suggested.
Yes, I did.
I did.
Excellent. So, who would like to share which Aiel warrior society they would be drawn to?
Jody completely wants this one first off the bat. I can see.
No, you go first. I just want to recap. Oh yes, okay.
Jody just quickly wants to go read what all of them do and make his selection.
No.
For the
I just want. I've got mine here. I'll go.
Okay, shoot.
I'm going with Shamad Konde, or the Thunderwalkers.
Okay.
They are. I'll read their role. The Thunderwalkers are generally used by chiefs as reinforcements wherever they may be needed. Often they'll be put into spots of apparent weakness in the flanks to defend, or added power to opposing flanks that appear to be on the verge of falling. So, these guys are brought in later in the battle as reinforcements. In South Africa, we call these guys the Bomb Squad, which is why I was immediately drawn to them. Our rugby friends will know all about that.
Yes, especially Gerald.
Ouch. That's a slow burn.
Yeah, that is a nice one, Joe. I mean, there's very few of these that I don't like. There was one, I can't remember which one it was, where their speciality is unknown. Like, they're all mysterious. Like, no one knows what their actual speciality is.
It's terribly mysterious.
Terribly mysterious. How about you, Bill?
I make every choice as in life, and everything I like around food. And that would be the water seekers. For they are the ones who find not only the water, very adept at it, but also knows what flank to cut off what animals for the most tasty or readily eaten meat, a vast knowledge of the herbs of the wasteland and where to find what to make a good potjie. And that's, the three ingredients of a boiki was
Yeah,
just
that's
listed there.
100% your guys. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was 99% sure that you would choose that one, and I chose the same one. I also
For the same
like
reasons?
that idea.
Because you like to make a boiki?
Well, I mean, I just like their resourcefulness, their survival capability, like being able to live off the land. It's just it's very practical knowledge. And,
Yes,
I like the Aiel, I like the threefold land, and I like the fact that these Aiel are specifically adept at living in the threefold land.
There's people that's got to be able to patrol the threefold land, because you're not going to have a bunch of Aiel that's really good at fighting necessarily move their 120 kilogram bulk bodies across 7-foot tall giants effectively and efficiently in that heat. So the survivalist goes out and survive out there while they're scouting, kind of like the rangers that go beyond the wall. Like, you have to be able to survive everything.
Yes, Benjen.
Yeah, Benjen.
Although Benjen died, didn't he? Sorry, spoilers for Game of Thrones.
Did he die? He was back in there.
Yeah.
So, did anyone die, really? Season 8? What? It's all a dream? Maybe season 9 coming?
But the water seekers specifically are also described on the fandom wiki, and this is what really tipped the scales for me, is that they are best at getting meat from dead animals and using that meat to create palatable meals from them, which to me implies that other people that would try to eat these meats would find them unpalatable. So like they're the ones that can make like snakes and like weird animals and weird lizards and stuff, make them actually palatable and eat them.
Well, it takes a unique blend of spices to hide the fact that meat is spoiled. But those spice blends exist. Yeah. And it blends.
And they're in the threefold
hides. You eat it, you go like, whoa, this is a pungent stew. Like, it's got some real kick to it. And you go like,
stew.
It sure does.
Amazing.
Nobody went for knife hands.
No.
Nobody went for hand-to-hand specialists. Yeah.
Too easy.
The John Wicks of the Aiel.
The Edward Scissorhands of the Aiel. Okay, let's move on to my biggest hang-up that I couldn't let go in the last episode. See if you can remember.
Why don't we? We're all looking forward to it, Moritz. Please. Let's go.
Well, it was actually quite a revelation when I found the answer that I was looking for. And you guys were sort of halfway there already. It should have tipped me over.
It's about the pronouncement of brooch.
I'm sorry, what word? What are you saying?
Brooch.
I don't understand. What's that word?
Nice.
No, I'm on board with that one. No, Birgitte's bow being of an ordinary sort today. I got a DM on X from a user by the name of The Golem, reminding me about some of the specifics of Birgitte's involvement at Falme. Now, you guys also brought up Falme, right? And, specifically the Sean Chan as well. And what we sort of were positing at the time was that when she was in Falme, the other heroes of the Horn were there, and now she's by herself. This is a big battle, there's too many numbers. Her bow is not going to be that effective. If she shoots every single soldier in the eye, she can still only kill so many, that sort of thing. So I went back and I read the battle. And where Birgitte is spotted in battle, it's only a couple lines. And it's written from Min's point of view. It's Min looking out over this battle in the harbor, and it goes like, as the tall ship, so there's a Sean Chan ship that's trying to escape this harbor where everything's on fire. As the tall ship crept towards the harbor mouth, a figure on horseback suddenly appeared around the cliffs skirting the harbor, riding across the water. Min's mouth fell open. Silver glittered as the figure raised a bow. A streak of silver lanced to the boxy ship, a gleaming line connecting bow and ship. With a roar she could hear even at that distance. Fire engulfed the foretower anew, and sailors rushed about the deck. Min blinked, and when she looked again, the mounted figure was gone. So she's ridden a horse on water, Jesus as a horse, fired a silver arrow from a silver bow that makes a silver line that connects the bow to the ship, and where the arrow struck, everything just burst into flame. So the magic part that we couldn't remember that she is now lacking is not just her super accuracy, it's like the super overpowered magic bow, like longbow +5 with magic arrows, just...
There was never a doubt in that she had that as a hero of the Horn. But she's now, the statement around it, I think, is more around, There's no point.
Well, none of us remembered because none of us said anything about her bow being that overpowered. We spoke about her being super accurate with it, and that maybe she's not so accurate now that she's not Birgitta of the Horn.
Yeah.
So the today that Birgitta mentioned was not in reference to the type of battle, like what we were saying, with large numbers over a large area, but specific reference to this time facing the Seanchan. The attack in Falme was the last time she had faced the Seanchan. So what she's actually, when I have to paraphrase what she's saying to Elaine, is like, this time facing the Seanchan, I don't have a super overpowered magical bow that can set everyone on fire.
Yeah. Now,
so her wording was just very obscene.
I'm going to save you a callback. It wasn't Min that's point of view. It was in that chapter. It was Avienda. Min wasn't even there. Oh, wait. Min was in...
Now you're going to have to call back your
Put
own shit.
myself back in call.
Avienda was nowhere around.
Yes, it's when Min was in Falme. And I'm thinking about them in the last chapter when we brought it up and to whom she said it. Sorry, I just put myself, my own foot in the shit.
That's what we do. That's why the listeners tune in.
All righty. So let's move on from that. And we can put the one, thanks to the golem for pointing, or at least like sending me in that direction. And when I read, I mean, I still got the books here right next to me and I read it again. I was like, oh, okay.
I'm just really impressed that you're starting to listen and follow the word and the guidance of people of the dark side. Right? Golem isn't really known to be part of the animals of the light.
Even a broken clock is right twice a day.
Well, here we go again.
Jody, you mentioned the spinning firework is called a pinwheel, and I said that Aussies have a name for it too, and I couldn't remember what it is, and they call it a Catherine wheel.
All right. Of course they do.
That's spinning firework that we, sort of compared when the wise ones do that rising and falling spinning disc of flame above the goat pen. A Catherine wheel. Yeah. Weird,
Did you look up why it's called that?
No. Why would I?
You're just going to drop this on us and then not tell us why?
I'll leave you some of the fun.
Okay. Call back for next time.
Okay, so Perrin's interactions with Massima at the start of the Dragon Reborn after the Shadow Spawn attack in the mountains. Do you remember when I made this pretty bold statement that you can somewhat blame Perrin for Massima's sort of current state, right? I mean, not fully, but at least he was part of it. So after that attack, where, if you'll recall, the wolves actually came and helped as well. Massima says, "It was a sign," the Shinaran said, turning in a circle to address everyone, "a sign to confirm our faith. Even the wolves come to fight for the Dragon Reborn. In the last battle, the Lord Dragon will summon the beasts from the forest to fight at our sides. It is a sign for us to go forth. Only dark friends will fail to join us." Yeesh.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some telling words there.
Yeah, the wolves are there because of Perrin, so I mean, that's one. And then later, after Rand had left the camp, remember Rand disappears, he channels and then he also disappears. Massima is looking haggard and he stops Perrin in the middle of the stream. That's the event I was sort of referring to. And he says, "You're from his village, you must know. Why did the Lord Dragon abandon us? What sin did we commit?" And Perrin responds with, "Sin? What are you talking about? Why ever Rand went, it was nothing you did or didn't do." Massima didn't appear satisfied. He kept on Perrin's sleeve, peering into his face as if there were answers there. Icy water began to seep into Perrin's left boot. This is his soggy foot.
Yeah.
"Massima," he said carefully, "whatever the Lord Dragon did, it was according to his plan. The Lord Dragon would not abandon us. Or would he? If I were in his place, would I?" And then Massima nodded slowly. Yes, I see that now. He has gone out alone to spread the word of his coming. We must spread the word too, yes." He limped across the stream, muttering under his breath. So, yep.
Totally Perrin's fault.
Maybe it's
That's why he's dealing with it now.
Perrin's dealing with it now. Yeah, like there you go.
Yeah, shit, I really fucked this up. Gotta go back.
I mean, there's a cool symmetry to that. Like Perrin was there to, if not to directly cause the whole thing, he certainly helped it along a little bit. And it was from his point of view that we see Massima start to exhibit these signs. And now he's the one that's been sent to deal with it, which is, I think, pretty cool. Then, Willie, you mentioned that the White Cloaks feeding Morghese bad information because they didn't know any better, specifically about Elaine still being in the White Tower. So you remember, that's what Morghese is thinking. Carradine knew about Elaine and Ibudar, and I'm pretty sure that Niall and Bulwer knew she was out of the tower, at least, if not in Ibudar. I mean, Carradine said that he has orders to bring her to the Fortress of the Light, but that's Carradine, and we won't get into why his word can't be trusted. But also, Niall would have fed Morghese only what he wanted her to think, right? He'd have no real motivation to be open and honest with her sharing info. So I don't think they were as ill-informed as we made them out to be. Especially with Bulwer on the scene, right?
Yeah, that's very hard truth.
There's a cool section with Bulwer in this in these chapters that we see his skills. We mentioned that isn't one of the Chafwheel, at least one of the leaders, Terran. It is Paralian. One of the senior members of the Chafwheel is in fact Terran and not Kyrenian. So we were right there. Joe, when I asked who Berowyn was as a pop quiz, the kinswoman with a cool bendy shield, you guessed she was a brown sister because there's only one, because there is one with a similar name. Were you thinking of Beonin?
Oh, Jesus, yes.
she's a grey sister, but yes, Beonin, Berowyn, very, very
You
close.
can play this game with
grey,
Jody
brown. I'm colorblind
all the time. Just keep a name ready that's got a very similar one. It's like, hey, Jody, what was that? Yes, and then it's fun. It's like setting him up.
Willie, you were wondering how to steer a raken. I mean, we'd heard about the reins in that scene where the lady fell down, but it is specifically with leg pressure and using reins fixed to permanent rings through their nostrils. So the raken have, because they've got this, like, I think I read the description last time, they've got sort of like horny beaks, like almost like a bird beak that both acts as lips and teeth, and then nostrils and eyes facing forward. That gives them good
So they can
vision.
bite right through what do they call the thing in the horse's mouth?
An arm or like
No,
a bit.
A bit is, champing at the bit.
So they've got permanent piercings in their nostrils that the reins are affixed to, but other than that, you steer them just like a horse with pressure from your legs and with the reins. We said that Cyrnid's warders would only have met Perrin in Kyrian, which is true. So remember we said, they just followed Perrin even though they didn't experience any of his leadership before. But I remembered after the fact that they would have been at Dumais Wells, where Perrin also led those forces in that attack. So
didn't they meet them on the road?
Yes, the Saladar Aes Sedai embassy sort of tracked or met up with Perrin along the way.
While he was traveling.
Because they were following, Alana was following Rand's bond, and then the Aiel with Perrin scouted them out and met up with him. Ian Yellen wrote in about that one as well, but I pipped you to the post, Ian, this time. And then lastly, Rianne Corley is the eldest, which is a position. So the leader of the knitting circle, which is the 13 oldest kinswomen in Ibudar. The oldest of them gets the title of the eldest, which is Rianne Corley, but she is not necessarily the oldest kinswoman, only the oldest one in Ibudar. There are kinswomen way outside of Ibudar, and conceivably some of them could be older. So subtle difference, but no, she's not the oldest, she's the eldest.
All right. So and that maybe, what's her name from the Nynaeve's nemesis? I forget her name now. Elyas is actually the oldest one.
I checked her age specifically for that reason, Joe. She's only like 150 or something, like she's in her 100s.
She's spring chicken.
Yeah, quite. But it doesn't defer really to Rianne, which prompted me to go check, right? Like, why is she so comfortable with just not deferring? She's just very, very strong of character. And that brings us then to listener contributions. Kerry messaged me last night with a theory that maybe, just maybe, the fact that Elaine was shielded by the Damane was the reason she didn't get burnt out when the gateway weave collapsed.
Oh.
So Alliandre was there as well, and we know that she was under risk of also being burnt out, but maybe the Damane actually shielded her as well. I can't imagine the Damane stepping through and shielding only one of the channelers. So Alliandre at that point had collapsed. She couldn't channel anymore, and that's why they could swarm through the gateway, because the fireballs weren't going through anymore. So we don't, and it's from Elaine's point of view, so we also don't know what happened with Alliandre, whether she was shielded or not. But it could be that a shield from the Damane. I mean, I don't know what the metaphysics of this arrangement would be, but it's a cool idea and it's a cool thought. So thanks for that, yes.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Dependable, Ian Yellen, says the following things. The weirdness in the power that Elaine feels when she's building the gateway is how the Ashaman describe the weirdness in the male half of the source when they attack the Shanchan. So the one thing that I remembered about the Path of Daggers is probably prompted by the cover, which is a picture of, a massive marching army and Rand at the front holding Calandor, is that, Rand and the Ashaman have a massive clash with the Seanchan in this book.
Yes.
And Rand is wielding Calandor and it goes crazy and he kills many of his own forces and his own Ashaman and stuff. And I think, if I recall correctly, and we'll put a pin in this till we get there, it is also because of this weirdness, not just because of the flaw in Calandor. There's a flaw in Calandor that doesn't limit how much you can channel through it. But I think it's the weirdness that makes him go sort of fucking haywire, and the Ashaman, like Ian says here, also reports on that. So around Ibudar, again, where the bowl was used, I think the battle is around Ibudar, isn't it? Well, now I can't remember. It seems in a mountainous region on the cover, but we'll see. Let's see. Actually, this is a good hypothesis. Let's see if this battle takes place anywhere near where the Boat of the Winds was used.
All right.
On the very side,
Ian,
on the hill.
on the same hill. They're fighting in this weird crater. Charred crater. Then Ian also says, it's weird that Perrin, Basil and Lamgwin seem to know each other so well since they only met each other once and for a pretty short time. But as we discussed off air, I'll have to go back and check. Correction within or callback within a callback. I'll go see how long they stayed at the Queen's Blessing. But I got the sense that they actually stayed there for a couple of days. But we'll have to see. Matt was sick. It's when they were all reunited, and Moiraine heals Matt from the dagger mostly, and I think they still have to find the way gate and all that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah, and they're hanging out in the library with an ogier. Like they had special treatment.
At least Rand was. Don't know how long Perrin specifically was there.
Matt was he came in there too, into the library. So if Matt was in the library, then certainly Perrin was.
That's true.
Matt would be the last person to set foot in a library.
Yes. And was also sick and sort of recuperating, right?
Yeah.
Then Marcus from Switzerland writes in with the following. He goes, hey guys, first of all, thanks for the amazing podcast. I've only discovered it recently when rereading Wheel of Time because my daughter started her first read of the series. She reads it in German though. I finally caught up with you now. One thing that made me think in the last episode was the attack of the Seanchan. Somebody shouted Shadowspawn and immediately the women, including the Aes Sedai, started throwing fireballs. Wouldn't that theoretically violate the three oaths? Raken are not Shadowspawn, nor are the Seanchan Dark Friends, so the Aes Sedai wouldn't be allowed to use the power as a weapon against them, right? I guess it can be debated that they didn't know that at that time, but certainly if the Raken returned, they wouldn't be able to fight. Either way, thanks a lot for your insights, musings, going off on tangents. I realize there's a lot that I've missed by reading myself. Looking forward to the second half of the series. Thanks, Marcus.
Well, I was just going to say that if they believe it to be true, the Oath-Rot won't bind them to a knowledge book of database of creatures out there. It would be linked to their own interpretation. So they can speak a lie if they believe the lie to be true.
Yes, exactly. So do you want to hear what the oaths are, verbatim?
Go for it.
Sure.
It's been a while.
To speak no word that is not true, to make no weapon with which one may kill another, which led me off on a tangent. I was like, oh, wait, who helps Perrin make his hammer again? And it's Grady and Neild and
Ashaman.
the Wise Ones.
Yeah.
6 Wise Ones, not Aes Sedai. And then the last one that's pertinent here, never to use the one power as a weapon except against Dark Friends or Shadowspawn, or in the last extreme defense of her life, the life of her warder or another Aes Sedai. So, that last one is interesting because the Seanchan are not Dark Friends, like Marcus said, and I think it would be a stretch to assume the Aes Sedai think that they are. I don't think that they think the Seanchan are Dark Friends. But defense of her life could be interpreted as her life as a free woman and not a slave. Right, so that's tenuous maybe. Could also easily be assumed that your life is in danger when the Seanchan are actively attacking you with beasts from another realm. You could probably convince yourself that your life is in danger pretty easily. And I think that the crux of what I'm saying is that the oaths are not applied objectively, but from the point of view of the Aes Sedai herself, like we've just said.
The oaths are kind of like the pirate's code. It's like more of a loose guide.
More like guidelines.
Suggestions, really. Well, as we'll find out later in these chapters, not really at all. Can't wait for that. Okay, so like a shockwave concussed Raken, let's nosedive into previously on Blood and Ashes. All the women on the farm scurry to evade the incoming Seanchan attack. Nynaeve tries to take charge but finds Elyas has taken care of most of the organising, even going as far as getting the Ungreal Renail pocketed. Elaine creates a gateway to a family estate not far from Camelin. She struggles to create the gateway, observing that the One Power seems to be behaving strangely, which she attributes to being extremely tired. After everyone has passed through the gateway, Elaine decides she is also going to unravel the weave so the Seanchan can't track them to Andor and get the gift of travelling. She starts before she realizes this is a really fucking hard thing to do. Nynaeve tells her to stop and to put the unpicked thread back, but Alliandre explains that once started it can't be stopped and that Elaine needs to see it through. Nynaeve and Elyas lead the Aes Sedai Windfinder's kin and hangers on to the estate manor with a message from Elaine. Alliandre and of course Birgitte stay with Elaine as she tries to unpick the weave. While Elaine is struggling with the weave, the Seanchan arrive at the farm and Alliandre and Birgitte hold them off while Elaine is busy. The Seanchan send crossbow bolts and weaves through the gateway, and both Alliandre and Birgitte take crossbow bolts in the arm and leg respectively. Birgitte realizes they need to get away from there and pulls Elaine and Alliandre up onto horses, but facing backwards toward the gateway while they work. Eventually Alliandre tires and she can't hold the Seanchan back, and they pour through the gateway. Damane steps through and from a decent distance shields Elaine, finally causing her to fail at the unpicking. The gateway weave collapses and causes a massive explosion, wiping out all the Seanchan that had stepped through the gateway, as well as the entire farm on the other side. Elaine, Alliandre and Birgitte are smashed by the shockwave but ultimately survive, but Elaine's horse does not. Knowing that Alliandre stayed with her at the risk of being burned out, Elaine asks Alliandre to become her first sister as soon as they can find a wise one, and Alliandre agrees. On the farm side of the gateway, we join a Seanchan Raken pilot that experiences the blast, barely avoids plummeting to her death, but does lose her co-pilot. She turns back to Ibudar to report the massive loss and seemingly awesome weapon. Perrin sends Berelain, Anura, and Galina into the town of Bethel, where they know Queen Alliandre of Gildan is holed up. All the channelers in Perrin's group felt the effects of the Bowl of the Winds, but not knowing what it was they witnessed, they assume it's the work of the Forsaken. On their way back to their camp, they encounter a group of Dragonsworn attacking Morghese and her party, defending themselves in a goat pen. A charge from Perrin, Aram, Fail, and Sionet's warders, along with some pyrotechnics from the Wise Ones, cause the rabble to scatter, but the warders catch one of the men and drag him back to the group. Meanwhile, Morghese tries to run away, but Perrin chases her down and convinces her they are the good guys and they're to help, and offers them their protection back at camp, but Morghese declines. The man caught by Sionet's warder gives Perrin an earful of rhetoric, but when Perrin realizes the man, or one of his compatriots, was carrying a string of human ears, he threatens the man and Massima's followers with hanging and tells him to go spread the word. The Wise Ones and Sionet are livid at Perrin for giving away their secrecy, but Perrin has had it up to here with this nonsensical violence and stands by his decision. Morghese changes her mind when she hears who Perrin is and accepts his offer of protection. Seeing the weird dynamic between Morghese, or Magdan, as she is presenting herself, and the other party members, he realizes that there is something odd at play, especially since Perrin also recognizes two of the men, Basilgil and Llangwin. Back at camp, Magdan seems to recognize the man of winged guards and the flag of Manetheren, which she comments on. Perrin defends their presence and calls out Basil and Llangwin from where they are trying to hide. Perrin takes Gil aside and questions him, and in doing so learns that the Seanchan have taken Amador. Lenny shows up to remind Basil in code not to give away Magdan's real identity. She also suggests to Perrin that he marry Magdan and Talonvor. Perrin is confused. When he gets back to his tent, Fail is talking to Magdan and offers to take the whole party into her service. Morghese, the until recently Queen of Andor, is shocked but accepts. Later, when Perrin is asleep, Fail sneaks out to meet with the Chafail and gives them secret instructions. We switch to Magdan, who sees Fail skulking off and thinks to herself she can use this position to influence events and possibly help Elaine, whom Perrin said Rand wants to, quote-unquote, put on the Lion Throne. Talonvor shows up and questions her decision to take up service with Fail, but she just says she needs to find her way in the world now. Talonvor challenges Morghese to send him away forever, which she can't do. He kisses her eyes and tells her he could never leave her anyway. She goes to sleep thinking about him. And that brings us to the first chapter for this episode, which is chapter 9, called Tangles. Willie, please untangle this cryness for us. Fun fact, I learned that a cryness in English is called a backlash, or a bird's nest.
Yeah, backlash for the action.
Did you know that?
Bird nest for the mess.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Now,
This has always been a cryness for me.
yeah, for me too. I've learned to untangle those. Lots of skills in that. I digress. We are in the point of view of Perrin Eyes, Golden Eyes of Manetheren, who is taking a walk through the camp and has some conversations along the way. Some very deep, meaningful
the talking you were talking
conversation.
about.
Yes.
No.
750, whatever their pace measurement
Pages.
is. No, paces. That is the distance traveled in this whole
Paces,
chapter.
pages.
He walked from his tent, where he wakes up, to find Fahil's not there. She's always up, and goes off into a mind tangent about how his wife will always, no matter how little sleep, be up just a bit before him. Anyway, Perrin overanalyzes. Think he's really thinky in this. Thinky boy, it's really thinky.
He is there.
Anyway, he gets himself up and on the go, gets himself ready, doesn't take his axe with him. He just feels like a walk there through the camp because they're on the move. Where are they? They're 40 leagues north of Abila, a town where Masima is currently. So we've got an exact location as well. Now, as he gets up and he is noticing and he's getting ready that it's actually cooler. Like, he knows the weather's, but he's certain that it's colder, like actually feeling it a little bit. And then gets out. He sees Fahil's already moving off with Sabin Bulwer and with Master Gil. And he has a bit of an inner monologue and sort of just does stock take of all the people around him. Spots Leanie, Lamgwin's in the background there, until he finds himself cornered by Basil Gill. Now, there's a lot of conversations with himself about the people that he's seeing, a lot of reminding, and I'm not going to go through all of that nonsense because it's really not important. I'll get to the important bits of this chapter. But Basil is being appointed by Fahil to now be his Shambayan, which is fancy word for male servant, that will make sure his larder is stocked and his pipe tobacco is of the famous kind. And that is his role, which I think is really suited to, as we all know he is. And he has basically been sent on his way, but talks a little bit too long, and Bulwer steps in and quickly gives him a tongue lashing to get moving. So another dynamic. Then Bulwer says to Perrin that look, he's been taken into the employ as secretary for Fahil, but also for him if he would have him. And then we all know Perrin's got an uneasy sense of smell around old mate Baller, because Baller hides everything well, including his scent. But he decides to open up to Perrin and drop some really, really big truth bombs. Very, very, like, Perrin's kind of like, unless you can tell me something about the Shanshan and this and that. Because he goes off on like, I also am known to dabble in secrets. I've eyes, and he gets a little bit like, lets a little bit out. But anyway, he then tells him, yeah, I know about the Children of the Light, where they are at, and he can offer him a lot of help on the Children of the Light if he needs that help. He also gives him the update on with the Shanshan, where they are located and where their most likely net point would be, and their movements. Perrin's like, okay, wow, this is helpful. But he also then tells him, yep, based on the names of the inns of the stories that he heard from all of the guys talking about where Masima is, because someone closes a drinking hole, it becomes news. Like that, if you think about your own network, how you'd spread like, the drinking hole shut. Anyway, the names got out, and he found out where the names are from, or that where they, and he knows, okay, cool, those are in the Abila, so he knows Masima's right there. So it's not just picking up the.
He knew that the inns that he'd heard about are in the town of Abila.
Yes, he knew they were there. Yeah,
which is not even in Amadisia; it's in Gildan. So he knows the inns in a town, in a country that's not even his home country. That's how clued up he is. And it's not that he heard these inns are in that town. He only heard the names of the inns, and he said, okay, that's from that town.
Could we say
must be some pretty good inns?
He knows his ins and outs of everything.
We could say, and we will, and just did.
But Perrin then takes all this news in, and he's like, okay, wow, that's good. He knows where he is now, and kind of wants to scoot off. But Bulwer actually grabs him on the arm and then also sort of berates himself a little bit, like to the action, which I think is a bit of a clever play of his the way that he's dealing with Perrin, but then drops the white cloak. Like, seriously, Valda is dangerous, but Asunawa is at another level dangerous. Like, you've got to understand that he can help him, but you got to don't downplay it. But then also he said, looking at the Manetheren banner and mentioning the inspired display, that potentially if he had to face them, he could take them. They'll be, it's not an impossibility. So what I have picked up, there's a lot of banner talk about that Red Eagle over these couple of chapters, like very much being pointed into it. Well, Perrin then gets excused from, or excuses himself from, old mate Basil and starts moving on through the camp. And as he does, he keeps counting, and he sees Grady and Neil in the corner. So we got the two Asherman doing some form work, which is quite good to see that they're sticking to that. And then bumps into some Two River guys. Flan eventually caught up with him and brought him his oatmeal and his berries and honey or whatever was in it. And please tell that I did get this to you, which he probably forgot. And then it's like, oh shit, Perrin's already on the move. I should probably give him his grog, or his food, not grog.
Gruel.
Flan?
His gruel. Yes, flan.
I mishear that.
Like the dessert.
Is that, am I hearing this correctly, or am I tripping
What
out?
do you miss? What do you?
I think
What
so.
are you
Sounds
hearing?
familiar. It's a guy's name.
Did you? Is the guy's name Flan?
Flan
With a double N, I think.
Bastere. Bastere. So maybe
Sorry,
it's
Joe. Flan.
flan.
Flan Bastere. Okay. Gotcha. Oh, him. Why didn't you just pronounce it properly the first time, Billy?
Flan. I said flan. What do you mean?
Flan Bastere.
Anyway,
Gotcha.
John Dinn, I probably ripped that one apart as well. Baron, he's around old mate, and he's hanging out with Jory, who's a pisscat. And then Perrin sees and thinks like, oh, they just passed the town, so all of these lads probably tried to get some brandy. But the problem is, some of them can't handle their brandy, and some of them want too much brandy. And then specifically, old mate Jory gets his brandy confiscated by Perrin, who actually pours it out, and he's still like, oh, old golden eyes, he don't miss nothing. Anyway,
Yeah. It's
against the
stoked about it.
Manetheren soldiers, unfortunately, these riff-raff, Two River bandit looking army is, they're there in heart, but they don't look the role,
No.
they're farmers still. Now, the Landvor has got a brief appearance, and Morghese and Lini, and there's a little bit of talking among themselves, and Perrin puts one and one together and says, okay, he doesn't want them now to think that they're being outed in any way or something, because this is still not completely trusting of their backstory. But then Perrin himself starts playing Dias Daimar by sending Aram to actually tell the truth, like going to sow the seeds of the truth. So even Perrin is roped into this game of houses. He's been caught up too long now.
Was pretty sharp. Because aren't they staring at Perrin after he's spoken to Bulwer? And I got the sense that they got worried because Bulwer is also, he's not like really one of their party. He was just in.
He's in on the side, and they know he's real back end.
And they know that he knows who Morghese is.
Yeah.
So they're looking at him like, I hope he didn't tell Perrin anything. And Perrin, like you said, quite astutely sends Aram to go, just say everything that Baller said, so that, now I'm calling him Baller. Baller said, so that they are that they rest assured that he didn't spill the beans about anything else, because he can tell that they don't trust him. Like, he obviously doesn't know it's Morghese, but he knows that those guys don't trust Baller. And he's picked up on that.
Yep, no, absolutely. Very astute. Aram says like, well, I'm not a cool kid. They won't talk to me. And he's like, oh yes, FYI, if you go there, just... And this is where I'm starting to get the sense that Aram is around Perrin the whole time, so that Perrin can actually control this horn dog of an Aram. because it's like,
Yeah.
if you're going to hit on one of the women there, it's going to be Linny and no one else, right? The rest are spoken for. And I think Aram actually, like, I thought, oh, Linny, maybe. Anyway, but Aram seems more trouble than good now, more
Yes.
so.
Since day one.
Well, day one, he was sort of like getting very cozy with Egwene. Remember when Elyas takes him to the Tinkers, takes Perrin and Egwene
Yep.
to the Tinkers the first time. So Perrin knows Aram is a bit of a flirt, but I think Perrin hasn't caught on to the fact that Aram actually is not looking at girls anymore. He just wants to poke things with his sword until they die.
The way I read it was, he does. He still does have a thing for the ladies.
Oh, does he?
Yes, in that chapter. I'll find the words. I will find the
Okay.
exact words.
All right.
Oh, saves me a callback.
Let's leave Aram and his nonsense on the side. And this is where Perrin has moving on now. He has a little bit of a think about seeing the horses, and had to look at the tree line and around, does any one of the farriers around? Because nope, they spotted him in threes already, looking like, oh shit, what's he going to look at our work now? So even Aram warns him that even they are feeling out of place if he inspects the horses. Like, they are not thinking that he trusts them to do a good job, or they're thinking that he does not trust them in doing a good job. So his go-to of like just picking up a tool and shoeing a horse is now not something that he can even do, because he's got 6 appointed people to look after the horses. And he shouldn't be lifting his own horse's feet, because he should trust that his horses looked after, which is a very big, this is probably just, dealing with first world lord problems. Like, you don't get to lift your own horse's foot anymore.
Yeah.
Hard going for him in that. But he bumps into Javian Nurel now. Javian is the first lieutenant for the Mayan Guard that's with him. And Javian is disturbed. What's the right word? I think both. I think he's heavily...
Disturbed and perturbed.
Yeah. Same. Different.
All the turbs.
The turbs. He's turbed about noises and visuals coming from the Aes Sedai that is in the Wise One camp, and starts telling about, they're getting their own water, and there was crying, and Perrin's like, oh shit, what are they doing? Anyway, that sets us up for Perrin now going down to the Wise Ones' tents to have a word to Idara. However, Sulin pops out behind a bush like, Maidens of the Spear does. And she then is trying to understand why two people would want to take the shame for Sionid, or one of the Aes Sedai sisters. And her interpretation of it and his is completely different, where she's like, "What? That would just shame her even more." Like, and he seems to think like, no, it's because of a high horse. Her perspective is from like, they're hurting her by doing it. Anyway, Perrin won't get the ale. He still very much think they're savages. He's a little bit out of his knowledge pool at the moment when it comes to them culturally. But anyway, Sulin warns him, well, if you're going in there, you should be more armed, because they're going to take you apart. Just a nice warning. So he pops his head in to find not only Idara there, but all 6 of them are sitting there, and he gets invited and gets given Theo punch. Oh no, cool blueberry punch. The blueberries tasted somewhat old. But
Important fact there.
yes, then he gets straight up told again, like, whatever you've decided, like, Massima must die. Like, 3 Dreamwalkers, 6 of us telling you that this should happen should be enough for you to understand why this must happen. And he is determined that it's not, being told that someone must die is not what Rand would want, and what not, and all the rest. And they eventually challenge him. I know that we'll get to that. He confronts Idara then about, okay, let that slide. What's happening with the sisters? And they tell him, Wise One business. What happens in Wise One Vegas stays in Wise One Vegas. We don't talk about this nothing to do for you. But and she then also calls in Sionid, who is eavesdropping outside, and said, no need to eavesdrop, to actually come in, and Matsuri also shortly after. And she then puts Perrin in his place, like, get out of here, stop digging in this business, this has got nothing to do with you, and we wouldn't need you to do this for us. So he's now his wolfiness smells flavors that he can't understand, and everything is confusing. It's just, life is hard for Perrin today. There's been a lot of thinking, and through very, very muddy water. And with them now finally putting Perrin to rest around the fact that, back off, let us be what we need to be with these apprentices. He gets put to challenge as well, like, why do you think we would kill one of our apprentices? Now he's caught, like, oh, can he tell them that he smelt it on them? But he now believes it's just recessed, like, deep into their bones, the hatred that they have for the Aes Sedai. But he is just, it's primal, his instinct. It doesn't allow for an evolution of change. And they then challenge him on that, and then also say, okay, while we're at this, you tell us why you want to put a rabbit man next to the Karakan. Why is that important? And Perrin's like, oh. And that's where the chapter ends, and he starts getting a lashing.
He starts regretting entering that tent in the
Should have
first place.
stayed in his own tent eating oats and honey.
Doesn't matter which tent he goes into in these chapters, he's in the shit in every tent. Stay
That's if the
outside.
Chafail let him into his own tent.
Exactly. I picked my favorite moment here. It was Willie saying his wolfiness smells flavors he can't understand. I think it was the sentence. This is fucking poetic gold.
Yeah. Oh, Billy does have a way with words.
I tried.
I found the line. When
yes.
parents telling him about Linny, like, be careful, the other two are taken. The man had a smooth tongue for any pretty woman, but he managed to look surprised and offended both. So, present tense.
Caught out.
And later on, on the next page, this from a fellow who stared suspiciously at anyone except Fail who ever came near Perrin, and never smiled for anyone not wearing a skirt. So,
I wonder.
present simple, showing habits.
I could make an argument, I don't think it'd be a very strong argument, but I could make an argument that Perrin is basing that on his initial interpretation of Aram from
Possibly.
back in the day.
This is from Perrin's
point of view, and he had front row seats and was very protective over Egwene. And in that first book, there is almost like a bit of a hint of maybe Perrin having other feelings for Egwene that are not so brotherly.
Yeah, but I think this reaction from Aram as well, when he tells him, like, hey, leave the other two alone, and he's like, oh, moi? With women?
I guess the reason I'm sort of pushing back on that, and only ever so slightly, is because of the picture that has been painted of us, of Aram, right? Who he is, right? Just like cold, murderous intent all the time. He has forsaken his entire way of being. He's like a walking storm cloud. And also his end, doesn't he turn on Perrin eventually? Like his murderous rage actually like lashes out at even Perrin in defense of Fail, or even against Fail, or something like that. He is a lost cause in my eyes.
When they rescue her from that town, from the Shaido, he goes all AWOL, and I think he's killed by the Aiel. Perrin's Aiel, maybe. I don't recall. Wow. Callbacks. Edit all of this out, Moritz.
I'm not going to look it up. I'll put a pin on it, and when we get to Malden, or whatever that town is, we'll see.
The place where they make the sea salt. Yeah.
Good. Okay. Yes. What else, Joe? Before I launch into my observations.
No, nothing. Just about that Aram dude, and that's about it.
Now, Jody, I suspect that you might have had this, and tell me if I'm right or not, but when Perrin suspected that if he woke up an hour after going to bed, Fail would still manage to be up first. Did you have any, it immediately made me think of the Monty Python sketch with the 4 Yorkshiremen?
No, I didn't think about it.
Because one of the last sort of like little rambles one of them goes on is, I used to get up in the morning at night at 10:30 at night, half an hour before I went to bed, eat a lump of freezing cold poison, work 28 hours a day at the mill, and pay the mill owner to let us work there. And when I went home, my dad would murder us in cold blood each night and dance on our grave singing hallelujah. But that first part about waking up 10:30 at night, an hour before you went to bed, it's like, okay, that sounds very similar.
Yeah, but that hadn't occurred to me, no.
Okay, Lamgwin and Talonvor gape at Perrin when they bow at him, and Perrin bows back. They're like, what?
He's just fucking with people.
Don't do that.
This is a theme throughout this chapter and the next chapter as well. Like him just reacting and people reading shit into it that is completely
and he's
way off his
like
intentions. Yeah.
Yeah, but it also
Yeah.
gets him in a bit of hot water in these chapters too.
Well,
Like
the next one especially. Remember in the last episode I said, doesn't Perrin keep calling the Chafai Hill idiots or something? It was in this chapter I counted. So Perrin's references to the Chafai Hill are the following. First, those idiots. Then that gaggle of idiots, useful as rats in the barn, squatting clump of young fools, layabouts. He then tells Basil, keep an eye on that lot and get Lamgwin to crack their heads if they look like starting to, like, this is in like 5 paragraphs. He's saying all these things. Like, he hates them. He has a very, very low opinion of them.
that gaggle of fools. Yeah. Layabouts. Yeah, everyone else in the camp is working their asses. These guys are just lying about.
Squatting clump of young fools. Billy, you hinted at this, the good old Two Rivers farmers. Like they are just farmers. And there's a comparison that RJ makes here. He goes, first he says that they're up at the crack of dawn and roughhousing and laughing around the cook fires. They're used to like farm hours and they're sort of like joking around and making their food and stuff. And then later, the Two Rivers men rode like they were heading out to the field, and the Mayenas were statues on horseback.
like
Even when they're riding, they're joking, they're ribbing each other, like having a good time.
But Perrin going through the Mayana camp as well as like a kind of almost like a bit of mock inspection. He could like how it's set up strategically like a fort, like weapons at the ready, the lances are stacked up, like it's all ready for war. And then he looks over to the Two River camps, and they're like, any what way ever they could put the tent.
Haphazard.
Have it there.
They're up making food and laughing.
But distinction here is that all those Two Rivers men are up and alert, whereas in the Mayana camp, some of those dudes are still lying on the ground sleeping, and it's like almost midday. So everything looks nice, but if they get attacked, the Two Rivers men are going to be ready first.
I don't think it's midday. I think it's super early.
It's early.
I think it's
I'm an old man now, like a dad.
6 a.m.
I think after sunrise, it's middle of the day.
The Spaniard that gets up at 9 o'clock in the morning.
I went to bed late.
Perrin thinks to himself, any serious trouble with Aiel usually meant someone dead and not the Aiel.
Yeah, that's true.
Nurel is just as worried about the Aes Sedai in the Aiel care as Perrin is, kind of fueling Perrin's position, right? So we trot this to death, Perrin being like super worried about the Aes Sedai in the Aiel care. I thought it was sort of a little bit obvious by RJ to have Nurel, now a Mayena, come up to Perrin and sort of just remind us about this situation, right? He's also so worried about the Aes Sedai in the Aiel camp and everything. To me, it seemed a bit blunt. But as you said, Vil, the Aiel say to Perrin, and I think it's for the first time we've read this in any of the chapters, that the Aes Sedai are apprentices. And that they're treated exactly the same as Aiel apprentices. And when 5 wise ones have decided that they can be more, they will be promoted. Right? So thus far, we know that they've been put to task and stuff. We know, as previously having read the books, that is what's happening. But I don't think it's been said explicitly. They've been given tasks and they've been told to shut up and they've been treated as apprentices. But none of the wise ones have ever said they are our apprentices now. Like
it's out now. It's property. It's there. And it does still mean that they might dig holes and fill them. And a lot of stuff that is not meant for an Aes Sedai to be doing. So just back up now.
They might get their hair put in pigtails and be made to carry a doll. And like all these things.
And don't ask them. Whatever you do, don't ask Perrin. Just keep your mouth shut.
But when Perrin is on the way to go see the Wise Ones, and Sulan sort of jumps up, Sulan gives Perrin a bit of a compliment. She goes, "Only a fool displeases the Wise Ones, and I've not taken you for a fool." And when I read that, I felt like a little pang of pride. It's like, yes, Sulan thinks that Perrin is not a fool. But then she goes, when Perrin says he needs to go see Adara now about the Aes Sedai, she goes, "Perhaps I was wrong."
It's short-lived, like, just short-lived, like, oh, you.
I didn't take you for a fool, but perhaps I was wrong. And then she goes to see the the Wise Ones, and she comes out again. And when Perrin wants to go in, she flicks his belt knife, and she says to him, "You should be better armed for this dance, Perrin Ibar." And Perrin should know better, because he thinks to himself, quote, "It's high time he sticks his nose into the Wise One's business."
Oh.
Oh,
you know what you're doing, you stupid, you idiot.
What happens when a
there's
dog
another-
sticks its nose into the cooking? He gets slapped on the snot box. Like, get out of here. And that's what happened to him.
He did.
Perrin being a fool. Later on in my chapter as well, I've got a note about that.
Okay, cool.
Again,
it's a theme.
Fucking Perrin.
Yes. And then what Perrin, I don't know if he's, like you said, Willie, I don't think he can say it to anyone. I can't remember if in this chapter he actually says it out loud, but his whole opinion of the Wise One's attitude towards the Aes Sedai is based on being there at Dumai's Wells and smelling that hatred that they felt, right? So at the time, I think Perrin is like smelling everyone, right? Like at the beginning of that book, it's the beginning of Crown of Swords, I think, that starts immediately after Dumai's Wells, right? It's all the Ashaman there and Rand, and like he's sensing everyone's smells and trying to read the whole situation. And we do read about the Wise Ones, hating on the Aes Sedai for what we learn later is not because of the capture and the torture, but the betrayal, going in and pretending to want to treat with Rand and then kidnapping him. That's the thing that they're actually pissed off about.
Yeah.
And he admits here that he doesn't smell it anymore.
Yeah, but he thinks it's recessed into their bones.
Exactly. His stubborn belief is that no one could let go of hate like that. So again, he's got no concrete evidence, not that the smell ever was, but I mean, it's a pretty good indicator, but he's got nothing to go on. And he does know Aiel culture to some extent. He spent a lot of time with Bane and Triad and Gaul and, like other Aiel as well. So...
Not Wise Ones.
No, but he is being... stubborn maybe isn't the right word, but... Yeah, he's stuck in his opinion. He is slow to move and slow to act, and he is slow of thought and that sort of. Not that he's dumb, but he is very sort of methodical and that sort of thing. But he is clinging to this thing. Perrin's also the one that obviously also clings for a long time to his whole Two Rivers upbringing about women and that sort of thing as well.
When ajah harps on about something, there's something that has to be like highlighted in this. I think this is the evolution of Perrin that's now being built up. Like, going there saying you can't just trust one thing. You've got to find the balance in everything. If you're going to be this player in this series, you got to level up on all levels. So I think it's really just laying that bad stuff out there, like laying that eventually he's going to have to learn to trust, and you can't just sniff the wind and know what's going to happen for real.
No. And I think
smell the flavors
and then not know how to process them. I do think that him sort of like standing up to the Wise Ones does earn him a little bit of respect from them because they do tell him they're apprentices, which they've not said to anyone. We don't know that as readers at this point because they have not communicated that to anyone outside of the Aes Sedai themselves. So here they are saying to someone who is not involved in this arrangement, there are apprentices, just cool it, just relax, don't worry about it. So I think there is a level of like, okay, we see what you're doing here, but seriously now, be okay with what's happening here and fuck off. Yes, leave our shit alone.
But also, like, the Aiel are not innocent in this. Like, they're trying to tell him in the tent, like, their closed-mindedness is...
Murder Massima.
Murder Massima. 6 of us have said this. This should be enough for you. Why don't you understand this? And it's like, I'm ignoring your culture. It's like, why would I accept your word?
I mean, this is a theme with all of them, right? Every culture in the books, like none of them can see from someone else's point of view and are slow to change. All right, let's stop flogging that dead horse and move along to chapter 10 called Changes. What has changed here, Jody?
Some things stay the same, and some other things change. Apparently, everything changes, if you ask Gaul. But Perrin, we join Perrin as he's leaving the Wise Ones' tents, defeated. The Wise Ones are not going to have any of his meddling, as we've now discussed at length. It is done. Outside, he looks around for the Aes Sedai. He's thinking now, well, I didn't win with them. Let me go check these Aes Sedai, speak to them. And spots Masuri beating a hanging rug to death as part of her apprentice training. But before you can even think of approaching her, she shoots him, and I quote, a glare of such frozen malevolence that he instantly regrets even thinking about talking to her. And he's like, well, okay, never mind. Not going to go talk to you. So he decides to move along swiftly. And when he turns around, he spots two men coming down the hillside in the distance. But of course, with his wolfy eyes, he can see clearly, this is old buddy Elyas. Hey! Or Elyas, however you want to pronounce it. I'm still on the Elyas train.
Elyas.
Me too.
It is Elyas.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Accompanied by his other good old buddy, Gaul. So, hey, cool to see these three together. Elyas is looking sharp, dude. Gone are the animal skin coverings that he's been wearing, and he's even brushed his hair. He's got in a ponytail, if I read that correctly. I may be off. And they are well met. Everybody's super stoked to see everybody again. Elyas immediately asks him about his axe. Like, you still got it? Yep. Still hating it? Yep. Paraphrased those 2 pages quite a lot there. Gaul tells him that he found in the inverted commas Elyas in the woods, which is actually Elyas sneaking up behind him and actually had to cough before Gaul even realized he was there. Sneaky. Very good. Like, if you can sneak up on Gaul, that's good. And the maidens hear this conversation as well, and Perrin thinks to himself that, they're going to rip Gaul a new one. But instead, they stand up and they rattle their spears and their bucklers together in a show of mucho respecto for Elyas. And Elyas is all, like, even shy about it. He's like, oh, come on, guys. So Elyas tells Perrin that he heard from the wolves that big change is coming. Here's our change. That the wolves have sensed the weather. This is the idea that we're getting over here. He doesn't say that. This is what we assume. Perrin has been avoiding the wolves because he hasn't been chatting to them a lot since Do My Wells after, what he made them do and what happened to them. So many wolves died. He feels a bit guilty, so he's not chatting with the wolf network that much anymore. So this is the first he's hearing from them about the wolves. Gaul tells them, like, look, everything changes, and leaves them to chat and go look for Bane and Chiad. He asks Sulin where they are, and much Aiel banter and humor ensues. Go read it in the books. But you get the fact now that the maidens, they like Gaul. He's cool. He may date the maidens. Elyas asks if they could, talk in a more private area. There's too many Aes Sedai around, like one that he can see, Missouri. one is more than enough.
Too many.
We know his history with the Aes Sedai. Then it's not good, and they like to tend to bring up old shit and love holding a grudge. So let's move along to a quiet area. So during this conversation, we learn here that Elyas is still bonded to his Aes Sedai, Rena, a green ajah. Of the green ajah. She becomes a sitter later and then isn't a sitter, and it's a whole thing. But she's masked their bond and isn't actively hunting him anymore. This is all news to me. But their connection is enough for him to know that she is alive, at least, and vice versa. So, like, she's left him alone now, but masks the bond, so they can't feel each other's emotions and all of that stuff. He just knows she's alive, and he's just grateful that she's not there. Because he said he would rather be stuck in a forest fire with 2 broken legs than face her. Yeah. So, Elyas then tells him he was surprised to hear that Perrin married a Saldaean. What with all the shouting and the scratching and the fighting? And Perrin's like, what? Like, he's shocked to hear that Elyas thinks that he should be shouting at his wife. But Elyas spent a year in Saldaea with a Saldaean girlfriend, so he knows what he's talking about. But he ends this conversation rather rapidly, however. Like, meddling in another man's marriage is a good way to get you, punched in the nose. So he drops the subject. He's like, anyway, like, you're probably treating her, like, so carefully and gently, and that's a bad idea, dude. Don't do that with Saldaean.
He knows.
He knows. Listen to this dude. So Elyas says that the wolves told him that Perrin was with this group, and since, he happened to be heading towards the area where the prophet was anyway, he figured, look, Perrin's going to need a friend, so if you could use a friend, I'm here to watch your back. And Perrin's like, dude, I could use a friend any time of day. You're welcome to join us. But he's shocked to learn that Perrin's actually leading this group of humans. The wolves don't distinguish like that. They know that old young bull is with these guys, not the leader of these guys. So he's like, you're coming up in the world, I see. Just then, Perrin hears a bluefinch call. That's a borderland bird. And a signal that means riders approaching that he actually learned from Basima and the Shinarans when he was traveling with them. And as he's using it now. So, sure enough, Berylane, Onora, and Galina come galloping into the camp moments later with a hooded figure among them and head straight for his tent. Elyas here recognizes Galina and warns Perrin about him being trouble. It's like he's not a bad guy. He's just a guy that reacts to every situation the same way, and that is attack. And I thought to myself, he'd make a good team with old Wyramon, who I then Googled. Put them two together. Oh, shit.
Charge at a trot.
With Wyramon, and also because I was like, I just quickly Googled it to see how to spell it again, and then I got to his wiki page, only to find out that he's a dark friend. Was I not listening this whole time?
We've said this many times, Jody.
I don't recall this at all.
Yeah.
Okay, so is he like? So this made me think: is Wyramon pretending to be an idiot to fuck up all the plans because he's a dark friend, or is he just an idiot and a dark friend?
I think the latter.
All right. I'd like to believe he is the latter, an idiot and a dark friend.
He's a pompous idiot dark friend.
Some dark friends are won over only to use them as blunt instruments. They are not won over for their intelligence, but for their position in power.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he's a Terran.
All right. Indeed. So anyway, I was reminded then that he is a dark friend. Mm-hmm. So all those who forgot, now you know as well. So Perrin tells Elyas that, listen, dude, we'll talk later, and then I'll introduce you to my wife, Fail, and you'll see that she's not like these other Chaldeans. Elyas, it's just like, whatever, bro. Cool story, bro. And heads off to see what news old Berylane and co are bringing from the Queen Alliandre. So obviously this is some messenger that they brought back. Turns out it's not a messenger, it's Alliandre herself. Mm-hmm. And Berylane introduces Perrin to the Queen of Gildan. Like, surprise, here's the Queen in your tent. Perrin is not prepared to negotiate with the Queen right now at this moment. But he does his best to wing it. He's got Fail there to help as well. She does whisper to him in low tones that only he can hear. Info,
so
like
good.
So good. Like the Sean Chan taking Ibudar 7 days ago. This is what she wished. This is how I know it's 7 days ago. So she tells, like, the Queen is talking to him about, like, oh shit. What was the other thing that happened 4 days ago now? I didn't write that down.
The channeling event.
No, that was the channeling event. Was Sean Chan taking Ibudar 7 days ago, and something else happened. Crap, I should have written that down. Anyway, she's giving you information. Yeah, and then the information he gives her is about the Sean Chan taking Ibudar, because he just heard it. And she's like, oh, you're very knowledgeable. And the Queen is super impressed with his knowledge. Like, you're on it. He's like, yeah, I'm amazing. Everyone else in the room is just as impressed and surprised that he knows this, because they just learnt it from Alliandre herself. Mm-hmm. And technically so did Perrin. So, good to keep Onora and Berylane on their toes, I thought, Can't let them have everything. The news is also alarming to him, to Perrin himself. This is the first time he's hearing it, and he's just now thinking about, shit, I need to tell Rand about this, This is important information. So his mind is all over the place. He just had that conversation with Elyas about his wife, and now he's learning about the Sean Chan. So he's thinking about a whole things when he should be listening to what Alliandre is saying and isn't actually at that very moment listening.
He's just walked out of the tent from the Wise Ones as well.
Yeah.
So he's all over the shop.
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. He's not prepared for this conversation, whatever.
No.
But he's just winging it. He's doing a good job, if I may say so. So at that moment, he realizes that, oh shit, the Queen of Gildan is talking to me, and I wasn't listening. And he goes, oh, sorry, Alliandre, what was that? I wasn't listening to you. And everyone is just like dead silent in the place. Eyes are wide open with shock. And he's like, what? And then he realized, oh shit, I just called her by her first name, as if we're old mates. Anyway, Magdan spills wine all over his hand as well, because, she's being who she is. And he just wipes it on his coat, like all these little gestures, like farm boy, like, oh, I've got red wine on my hand, I'll just wipe it on my shirt. Like, he's one of my kids, you know. Fucking use a towel or something. The queen recovers quickly. Alliandre, because if you recall, if I say exactly how many queens are in this room, it's technically 2 queens and one that gave up her throne, but I still consider her the queen because Elaine is not on the throne yet. So there's 3 queens in this tent at the moment. But I'm talking about Alliandre recovering. And she tells him how she snuck out to see him instead of sending a messenger because, you know, she wants to get the measure of him. This is her intention. Everyone is just openly staring at Perrin now, waiting to see how he'll put his foot in it next. Like Berelane's looking at him, and Mygdon's giving him the slanty eyes, and Fael's checking him out. And she tells him, Alliandre this is, she tells Perrin that Berelane told her a great deal about him, which pisses him off. And now he's still thinking about what Elyas told him about shouting at Fael, and he thinks to himself, now, if there's any woman that needs shouting at, it's Berelane. And here's my note.
He just doesn't put one
Perrin,
and one
fool.
together.
Oh, imagine Fael's reaction if he had to shout at Berelane.
Oh, Jesus. I was just thinking, shut up, dude. Backwards. You've got it backwards.
Yeah.
All right. So with his mind wandering and all his emotions all over the place, he figures it's, you know, it's best not to waste a queen's time. You know, probably these queens like to get straight to the point, so I'm going to get straight to the point. He just blurts out like, so what's your decision? You're swearing to Rand or what? You know, like, can we get on with this? But Alliandre is, you know, she's still trying to get the measure of him and, you know, deflecting all his questions and asking him more questions. So Perrin starts to realize there's more going on here under the surface of this conversation. Problem is, he has no fucking clue what that is. So he's like, what is she after? Reassurance? So he's like, all right, I'll just reassure her. So he starts telling her that Rand will deal with all the rumors. Remember, these Arthur Hawking's armings are coming back. The Aiel apparently attacked some people just like 20 kilometers north or whatever. I assume that is the Shaido that have been split up, you know, like fractured all over the land. And he's like, no, the only Aiel that are in this area are with me. Don't worry about that. And the Prophet, that he'll deal with the Prophet. And so, like, they're worried about, you know, the Sean Chan and the Aiel and the Prophet. And he's like, nah, we'll take care of everything. Don't worry. Rand can have an army of 10,000, 100,000 men here in a day or something with traveling and all that stuff. So he suggests, you know, she's got a lot of questions. We might need to sit down for this. So he sits down immediately. He's like, all right, well, have a seat, everybody. Let's have a chat and I'll answer any questions. But no one else is sitting, he realizes. And now he's like, oh, shit, do I get up? Do I look funny now? But he's saved from having to make that decision as Alliandre quietly approaches and then kneels before him. Taking his hands in hers, she swears fealty to Lord Perrin Ibarra, relinquishing her lands and throne to him. I love this part. I'm sure everyone who read it did as well. Again, shock fills the tent. Galina drops his wine cup. Perrin just stares at her like, and Fael has to come to the rescue again because Perrin's just looking at her with his mouth open, not saying anything. And Fael starts whispering again, so low that only he can hear the appropriate response. The Saldean version of the response, I suppose, to that kind of oath. But before he can get there and repeat what she says, of course, he ruins the moment by asking her, like, why? Why would you do this?
Are you sure?
Are you sure you want to do this? You know, both Fael and Berelane give him looks. I think Berelane actually like sniffs or even like makes some sort of noise. You know, looking at him like, shut the fuck up, you country bumpkin, and just, you know, accept her oath. But he's a good guy, and he's telling her, like, listen, you know, people have told me I'm a Taviran, and weird shit happens around Taviran. So are you sure about this oath? You sure you're not doing it just because I'm a Taviran, or is this something that you really, really want to do? And she's sure. She was sure that the moment she heard he was there, she's glad that he's a Taviran because Galdan is going to need all the help it can get, and she can't protect the land and her people. She really, really needs him, and she's stoked he's there. And now, after meeting him in person, she's even more convinced she's made the right decision. So he's like, all right, cool, I'll accept your pledge. And then using the words that Fael had whispered to him earlier, he accepts her pledge. Alliandre gets to keep her lands and throne as his vassal, etc., etc. He accepts her. She is super relieved. Kisses his hands, and now he's even more uncomfortable and just wants to get out of there. Everyone is just staring at him. And again, in this long, awkward silence, except for Fael, who is beaming with pride. She's like,
Yeah.
well, my wolf. She's like, yeah, followed my... I like you say, Morris, that how cool is it that she knows about his ears, whispers so low, and guiding him. But she's like, you did really well. You did really well. So after a sufficient amount of uncomfortable silence has passed, he leaves them and gestures for Galina like to follow him, just jerks his head like, get the fuck out of here, thinking that the Aes Sedai and Berylane and Fael want to talk in private with Alliandre. Outside, Galina is just like, dude, that was awesome. Now I can tell people I've seen a Taviran in action. And like, what did you want with me? And Perrin's like, oh, fuck, I don't know. I just I wanted you to get out of the tent. And he doesn't have an answer for that. So, But luckily, again, he's saved from having to answer that by a commotion in the Mayaner camp. And they'll have to go see what's happening over there first. And that'll give him time to think and come up with an answer to that question. So off they go. We change to Fael's point of view. She's standing in the tent flap, watching him and Galina walk off, while she escorts Maigden, Brienne, and Linny out of the tent as well. She's like, all right, you guys can go. This is going to be queen, lordly business discussed. You can leave. Also, you've been doing a really shit job, spilling wine all over the place and muttering curses under your breaths. All right, so she catches Perrilean's eye, the Terran that's in charge of her Charfael. And she uses their very crude hand talk, basically, to tell the Charfael to form a perimeter around the tent. A nonchalant perimeter. Just pretend like you're in little groups chatting. No one's going to notice, So they form a perimeter, and Berylane uses this moment to sneak up behind Fael and make snide remarks about her servants. I was like, shut up, bitch. And then Honora tells her that Brienne is a wilder. Did I read that correctly? She's the youngest one is a wilder.
Not Brienne.
Brienne?
Magden.
Morghese.
Guys, remember?
Is Morghese the young? Oh, okay. I did not read that right correctly at all.
She looks the youngest, as we discussed last time.
She looks the young. In my mind, she's not the youngest. Yeah, I didn't read it as her, of course. Weak, but she can channel, is what she tells her. And then they're all she's telling her like, yeah, but you got to be careful with those wilders. They always run away. They're always trouble. Like Berlane's being a real bitch with Fael, but Fael, to her credit, does not get provoked. She turns and asks Honora to make a ward, this is Fael, against eavesdropping. A childish gesture to skip over Berylane and go straight to her advisor directly. But fuck her. She can't deal with her at the moment. As she can deal, she realizes she should be dealing with Berylane better, being the queen of a country. But she just can't with this woman. That's just, there's limits to anybody. Turns out that Alliandre, as I said earlier in our previous chapter discussion, that Alliandre completely misread Perrin's uncertainty and distraction as a masterful example of Dias Daymar. He is a formidable man. A little bit of a hint there, a splash of anger there, a threat there. And she's like, whoa, he just guided me right into that, didn't he? It's like, no, not at all what happened. But if you want to believe it, sure, go for it. So Fael plays along, of course. She's going to jump on this bandwagon. And she with her little line like, oh, he spent some time in Cairhien. Not a lie, but
true.
not the full truth. Do with that information as you please. So she's straight up confronts Alliandre to ask her why she doesn't want to return to Bethel yet. Is there something more you want? Are you intending to keep your oath? Because she, being a northerner, doesn't trust these southerners one bit. She says they have funny notions of what it means to swear fealty, like what oaths mean. So she rounds on Alliandre right away, starts to interrogate her. Alliandre is playing it cool, and as I didn't mention, but we did read earlier, that Perrin smelt on her that she is terrified. All right, but from the outside, she's super queenly and stately and whatnot. He's super impressed with that as well. I don't think with those emotions I could be that cool and calm and collected. So she's continuing that ruse over here, Alliandre that is, in front of Fael, but Berylane and Honora fall in at Fael's side, backing her up without even knowing the plan, which I thought was also very cool. But then being who they are, they know something, Fael's up to something, with the queen, by the way she's questioning her. And Fael thinks she may hate Berylane, but at least she knows when to shut her mouth and put their adversity aside and work together without having to be told. So she's got advanced advanced level negotiators and queens on her side. So that's cool. The Aes Sedai as well with Honora. So it turns out Alliandre is scared that when Perrin leaves, she's going to be right back where she started. So she's sworn fealty now, and then Perrin leaves with his army, and she's at the mercy of the Prophet once again. And if he finds out that she's been swearing an oath to this guy and not to the Prophet, because when the Prophet says, follow the dragon, he actually means follow him, and I'll help you with the dragon,
Follow the Prophet of the dragon.
So, yeah.
Remember, some
follow
pigs are
me,
more equal
Massima,
than
not
other pigs.
Yeah, exactly. So Fael suggests that if she wants more, she should do more. Like, why don't join Perrin on his visit to the Prophet? When we go and visit him, you can come along. Bring a little army, of course, you're not gonna, you bring your retainers. Alliandre is not keen on this idea. His mouth is wide open, eyes like, what? Like, why the fuck would I do that? Fael tells her it's because the wife of your liege lord has asked you to. And Alliandre was like, shit. But she has to now agree. Only confirming what Fael already thought, that this queen had no intention of fulfilling her oath. It was just words to her. That she just wanted some protection on her side, and then she'll go back to doing what she wanted. And Fael's like, no. You're coming with me now, where we can keep an eye on you. I don't trust you at all.
I'm the captain's wife now.
Exactly. I don't care if you're a queen. I'm your liege lady now. So, while Fael has her on the back foot, she also starts asking for more. It's like, firstly, you're going to write some letters to your lords, telling them that a man from the south has raised the flag of Menetherin. Alliandre tells Fael immediately, like, dude, like, if I do that, half of the lords that are sworn to me will immediately inform the Prophet, as they fear him more than they fear me, Feels like, perfect. Then you'll also write a letter to the Prophet, telling him that you are going to raise a small army to deal with this man from the south that's raised this banner. Honora is super impressed. Berylane too. She actually gives like a little giggle, like super impressed. Like, hey, that's pretty clever. And Honora's like, yeah, no one who's going to know who's who. This is very good manipulation over here. So it's just going to be armies everywhere. Who's in league with who? Who's fighting? Who's doing what? Chaos.
Let's be honest.
The Lord of Chaos rule.
Massima is not well versed in the knowing of banners and colors. So he's,
Yeah, but when he hears that somebody has raised the banner of Menetherin, like everyone knows Menetherin. They'll know the name. But yeah, so Fael is now playing everybody against everybody and sending letters in here. And well, that's if the pigeons deliver these letters. We'll have to wait and see. Yeah, so at this point, like Alliandre admits to Fael that she is just as formidable as her husband. And Fael thinks to herself at this point that she'll need to recall her people in Bethel, in the town that the queen was in, that she had left there to kidnap Alliandre. Had this discussion failed, and Alliandre had returned to the town, her plan was to kidnap her to bring her along. Am I reading this correctly?
That's what I think those secret orders were in the previous chapters.
If I can't get the queen to come with us and to keep an eye on her, we're going to have to kidnap her and bring her out the city.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because she didn't know that Alliandre would come with Berylane out of the town.
Yes.
So she was going to take her out of the town.
Yeah.
Her.
And because her last line is, Perrin would not have liked that.
Yeah.
Kidnapping the queen and bringing her with, But luckily, so she had a backup plan this whole time to kidnap the queen.
Yep.
Right. Good thing you didn't have to use that.
That's why she had the Chafael check whether the wagons are searched when they leave the town.
Yes. That's all of that. Sneaky Fael. She is ballsy. Holy shit.
She is bold.
Yeah. So, we leave them, the ladies in the tent. Back to Perrin. We're going to go find out what all that commotion was about in the Mayana camp. Turns out some of their scouts had returned with prisoners. To Perrin's nose, they smell heavily of smoke. Some of the Mayaners have like soot on their faces. Others are nursing burns. So there was some fire happening over there. These, and his report to Perrin when he asks what happened, it says these turnip eaters had burned a farmhouse with the farmers still inside. So the Mayaners were too late to save the farmers, but knowing Perrin's distaste for this sort of thing, they caught the Dragonsworn. It's obviously Dragonsworn, and brought them in for questioning. They are filthy, what are they called? Turnip eaters. And one of them is like their leader, who is super haughty, even though he looks like he's been living in a pigsty for 5 years. But he gives, he gives them this lofty, confident speech of how righteous they were making example of these farmers, and that the prophet will triumph in fire and blood and yada, yada, yada. It's like zero fear on him. Perrin just looks straight at them and says, hang them. Only words. And this is again where we hear thunder. Thunder in the distance, but only to his ears still at this point. And previously, I didn't mention it again in my notes, but he hears thunder throughout this chapter a lot, just on the, so even so faint to him that he thinks maybe it's not real,
Yeah.
So Perrin stays to watch the hanging. He gave the order. The man who gives the order should at least stay and watch. And this scum, they kick and they scream and they cry and they beg and they die. Except for old lofty speech man, who glares defiant till the end. And this is where that loud thunder peals through the sky. Now everybody hears it, right? There's lightning too, there's gusts of wind, and these big drops of rain just start falling. But it's a cloudless sky. And as abruptly as it started, it's all over. The storm heading east. Because it's a cloudless sky, and I think some of these guys they were at Dumai's Wells. People are holding their swords, they're ready to fight. They think this is another attack, because lightning from a clear sky and all of this.
Yeah.
But none of that. And it's just gone. Aram asks if this means the weather is changing. And Perrin replies now with Gaul's words. Everything changes, Aram. And that's how the chapter ends.
I had a rough day. You had a very intense day. And it's not over yet. We're only in midday.
No. Yes.
I'm sure watching a hanging was more fun for him than being in that Wise Ones tent.
Or dealing with
I'd rather watch 10 hangings. Lots happening. Busy day.
There's a couple of stuff that really stood out for me. I mean, mostly around the Alliandre conversation and how Perrin. So he's literally still licking wounds from the tongue lashing he got from the Wise Ones. His mind is everywhere over the shop, and it just comes through, and then he realizes. But he falls very beautifully into Fail's plan. It just all was perfect. But other than that, it's just a tough day for him, eh?
He recovers. It wasn't perfect, but he recovers well. And actually those fumbles and those stumbles along the way worked out for the best. From Alliandre's point of view, she was just expecting something and got way more than she bargained for. Because she assumes she's talking to a lord he's been a lord for a long time. He knows he grew up in court and all of that stuff. She doesn't know his history. She just knows it's Lord.
He's just a puppet there.
Wow,
really.
what a master manipulator. His wife's whispering shit to him. Say this, now say that.
Just to the T. He's been directed. Don't know what I can say about the vagabonds that once looked lordly.
Hang 'em.
And their clothes is so soiled that it looks stiff. I never get that.
Yeah.
How do you... The water's surely running in the river still. You can wash some clothes.
No. The prophet doesn't allow that sort of thing. There's a lot of farm burnings to happen. That's important. Not shaving, not washing your clothes.
We all know what a nutbag
Moritz is consulting the holy texts.
I was trying to find some of the stuff that Perrin was saying to Alliandre, that he was just being sort of straightforward. But if you had to look at it from Alliandre's point of view, they could be construed as threats. Like when he's talking about what you'll have to come out into the open, and saying he's just being straightforward and blunt, with no ill intention behind it. But when she lists off the things like a bit of a threat here and a little bit of that there, if you had to put yourself in her shoes and hear everything he's saying, it could be oh shit, okay, yes, all right, you're well on top of the situation. There's
a moment. There's a moment there where he's remembering something and he gets angry and he tries to rein in his anger, and that's what she sees. She sees this surge of anger and then pulling it back, and she's like, "Ooh, he's a dangerous man," oh.
But she reads this as a show of anger.
Yeah.
He's sending a signal. He's very versed in Dice Daimar, a very formidable man. Well, he did spend some time in Kyrian.
He did indeed. A lot of time in that room with the nobles, being thrown around with one power.
What else, Phil?
I've got nothing else there.
When Elyas says goodbye to, or when Gaul says goodbye to Elyas, he gives him the formal greeting. He clasps his forearms and he says, "My honor is yours, Elyas Makira." You know, like acknowledging formally that, okay, you got the better of me there. I'm in your debt. When Elyas tells Perrin that the bond between him and Rena lets him know vaguely where she is, it nudges something in Perrin's memory.
Is this Rand and you think? Alana?
Or Rain.
I think Alana. When Alana asked Perrin, because she asks Perrin if she can bond him in the two rivers, and Perrin warns Perrin against Alana, and Fail is the one that tells Alana in no uncertain terms, back the fuck off my husband. I think Perrin realizes, maybe subconsciously here, that Alana wanted to bond him so that she could keep tabs on him. I don't know, that's the only thing I could come
The
up
only
with.
reason I said Moraine is back to the good old book 1, where they get given the coin to keep tabs of them.
Did Perrin ever know
No,
that that's what the coin was for?
not at that. I don't think it ever came out.
No. Not to Perrin. I think we know, and Moraine may have told Nynaeve or someone when they're trying to like track them down and find them and stuff. But yeah, the bond specifically made me think of Alana, who wanted to bond Perrin in Evansfield.
That's right.
Alliandre is not wearing any jewelry.
No, because she can't. Seema took it all.
Probably gave it all to the prophet.
She did.
Yeah.
When we see her the first time, it's a whole scene where she takes off all her rings and she gives it to him. It's when Nynaeve comes to meet with Massima. Alliandre is there. She's the
Yes, I
woman meeting
recall
with him
that.
and giving him all of her jewelry.
Well, I suppose she may have had more, but she was trying to sneak out of the castle, so probably took off all her jewelry
That too.
to
And I mean,
disguise better.
if any, because they're so alert for being spied on by the prophet's men, right? Like all the guards at the gates of the town and the crossbowmen, and like, you know, the word can't come out of her talking to another noble and all that sort of stuff. I think like even being seen with jewelry on is, so even if she still has jewelry, she's not going to be wearing it anymore. She has to put up the show for Massima's benefit. We also get here confirmation of Bulwer's theory about Abila.
Yep,
Is it?
that's right.
Is it Alliandre that says it?
Yes.
Yes, Alliandre says it.
Also the same
And
distance.
Perrin goes,
That's the thing that happened 4 days ago.
uh,
That was the event that she tells him about.
okay. But it makes Perrin go, oh, Bulwer was right. I should go talk to him again. Maybe ask him about the Shaunchan and how many Taraboners there are and all that sort of stuff.
You totally should. He
Yes,
knows those answers.
he knows many things. When Berlane and Fail have a little tit for tat as well, Berlane makes some comment about Fail's servants, and then Fail's come back and says, I always thought you were fit for hiring servants.
Yeah.
It's just before she commands Onura to make the weave for no eavesdropping, and then Onura just does it, and she says, "It's done, Lady Fail." Like, when do we see Aes Sedai being so subservient?
Well, I think the subservience of that comes into the status of her being Perrin's wife.
Yeah.
And what was promised to Perrin.
Aes Sedai think themselves higher than queens and everyone. Onura has not sworn fealty to Rand or anything. She's one of the Aes Sedai that was in Kyrie, and maybe the only one other than Cadsuane who is not like either a fucking prisoner and Datsang or in the Wise Ones' care. Onura was sort of kept free and clear of that. So she doesn't have any obligation towards Perrin. Her loyalties lie only with Berlane. But she's in the presence of a Taveran, and when Perrin or when Fail says it, she just does it and says, "It is done, Lady Fail." And calls her Lady Fail, you know, like no Fail, young woman, nothing like that.
Child.
Doesn't look to Berlane for like, should I?
Maybe it is
Well played by Fail.
to signal to Berlane to pull herself in.
Oh, it was a power move. Absolutely, it was. But like you said, Jody, I don't remember this at all. But Fail thinking to herself that she respects Berlane, and if it wasn't for Perrin, she would actually like her.
Yeah, she said it wouldn't be so bad their game if Berylane didn't think that the prize was Perrin, which is not the case.
Well, Berlane did say to Fail, I will take your blacksmith as a toy, whether I'm interested in him or not, purely to spite you.
Yeah, but Fail knows that will never happen. Like, Perrin's her man, 100%. She does know
She doesn't know it. No, it's...
She knows it. I disagree. Heartily.
Alliandre can't stop herself from using the prophet's language when referring to Rand. She talks about Rand, blessed be his name in the light. Like, it's so rote, it just comes out. Which is kind of creepy and weird.
It was driven into her with fear over time. She's been dealing with him since the last book.
It's still there, that fear.
You know, yeah. She's just trading carefully.
What does that say about the Seanchan and anyone that speaks about the Empress? Like,
May she live forever.
May she live forever. What sort of rule?
Same thing.
We know what kind of rule there is, but it just sort of translates into them being equal to Massima's insanity.
Yeah, well, their fervor and their sort of like blind loyalty to their traditions and their power structures. Like, we know that. I mean, the whole system of the blood and what it's all based on, and their loyalty to their queen is second to none. I liked that Squadman Ortis, who's the Mayener that captured the men at the farm, is saying that the men, the Dragonsworn that were burning the farm, some of the farm families tried to escape through a window, and then these guys like crushed their skulls, like as they were trying to escape the fire. He knows they caught these men knowing how Perrin feels, so they are like, they didn't have to intervene, but because they know that Perrin wants it, they thought they should, which is cool. Like, Perrin's influence is stretching beyond the two Rivers men. It's like everyone that's following him now has bought into this. Okay, cool. We're going to stand up for what's right, which I thought was cool. They acted without orders and did the right thing, which was cool.
And there's a scene, actually, I forgot to mention it, the last line, where Aram says to him, he says, Lord Perrin, does this mean that the weather is changing? And he's about to tell him not to call him Lord, and he just goes, yeah, everything changes. And he leaves it alone. Like, oh, he's Lord Perrin now. He's starting. Accept it. Yeah. He's even letting Aram calls him that.
Was it in our previous episode where Perrin doesn't say anything about the flags, and everyone's like, oh, he's not asking us to take the banners down. And like, it's more about what he's not saying. That. So yes, Perrin stepping into that role, hopefully just making peace with the fact.
Another example of that is in Willie's chapter, when he was trying to go up to the horses just to look at their shoes and stuff, and realizing that now he's learned that when you do that, makes those guys feel like you think they're doing a bad job, so he doesn't do it. You know, again, just following the rules of lordship now.
Yeah, he's learning,
starting to understand
slowly.
That perspective, how these other people perceive it from their point of view, what it looks like and what it implies.
Yeah,
should apply that to the wise ones, Perrin.
One group at a time, Joe.
Start with the farriers. Work your way up.
Work your way up to the wise ones of our heel.
That's a big ladder. That's a long ladder to climb.
Isn't it?
No offense to the farriers out there.
No. Okay, should we step onto the last rung of our ladder this evening and move on to chapter 11, called Questions and an Oath? I'm starting to question
I can summarize this chapter in 3 words, but I'll tell you when you're done.
Okay. I was going to say, I'm starting to question my own oath to do these chapter summaries, but here we go. Once more onto the breach.
Go for it. You'll be fine.
Okay, so we join Sevanna and a number of Shaido Wise Ones in a barn where they have strung up a Seanchan soldier whom they are questioning. As the scene starts, the soldier breathes his last ragged breath as the toll of the Shaido questioning proves too much. Riel says they should have left this questioning to the maidens or the black eyes. This is not something the wise ones normally do, but we know Sevanna is breaking tradition left, right, and center. Apparently, the soldier is the last survivor of a group of 10 mounted Seanchan soldiers who thought they could kill 20 maidens just because the maidens were on foot. How wrong they were.
Foolish fools.
This was the first Seanchan they had captured in the 10 days, apparently, that they have been in this land. Somarin thinks the man was strong for a wetlander and that he told them much, which is just funny to hear the Shaido refer to the Seanchan as wetlanders, which of course is true. But they lump them all in, and there's another sign of this a bit later. But Meria is not convinced. They already knew that the Seanchan were, quote, 2 days west in the city called Amador, so now we know where the Shaido are, or at least the Jumai. Very close to Amador, 2 days from Amador in Amadisia. So we know that Samael sent this group of Shaido with all their wise ones to Amadisia. So yeah, they're scattered across Gildan and Amadisia, right? So Meria doesn't place much stock in their talk of Arthur Hawkwing's armies and laments the fact that they didn't just leave this to the maidens. But Sevanna reminds her that they can't just let the information spread too quickly because their people are frightened after their recent run of bad luck, and the soldiers' lies would have spread more fear. She tells herself his stories must have been lies. There's no way they could have come from across the ocean and that there are more coming. And it's a weird admission for an Aiel to make that her people are frightened. And later she also says like she's trying to put backbone into them again, like she knows that they took a massive hit in their confidence after Dumai's Wells, and now this thing with Samael as well. The other wise ones start banding together, and they are right to be saying that they are right to be afraid, and that Sevanna's friend Kadar has sent them to die. But Sevanna surprises them and admits that she thought Kadar might betray them, but that she prefers this to waiting for death in Kinslayer's dagger. This being these sort of plump lands ready for plunder. She calls it a rich, soft land ripe for plunder. She thinks that with all the wise ones with her, they have as strong a force as any wetlanders, including the Seanchan. So she had 300 wise ones at Dumai's Wells and 40,000 spears, and we learned later that 23 wise ones died and 10,000 of her Shaido spears died, and they've been scattered. But Sevanna, importantly, has all the wise ones with her, so she has just shy of 300 wise ones, but she thinks that makes their force just as strong as any wetlander force, including the Seanchan.
That's way more than I thought. I've always pictured their group of wise ones like 12, 15, 20,
They only name a couple.
Yeah, because you don't hear about the rest, but there are hundreds. Shit.
Because they had a 40,000 strong force. But now with just the Jumai, it's a much smaller group of warriors with, the Meridin, the brotherless that have joined them as well. But all the wise ones traveled with Sevanna. When they all stepped through the travel box gateways, she made sure to bring all the wise ones with just her. Her plan is to find the other septs and then take the land and then find Kadar and make him beg for mercy. Sorry, too late. He's dead. Then Tion asks her, what about the Kara Khan? And she brushes him off. Sevanna brushes him off as inconsequential, but internally she knows she wants his power and intends to have it. She breaks off the conversation with her, I don't intend to stand here and discuss bridal wreaths, and she stalks off. And as she leaves the barn that they are in, she contemplates her tenuous hold on the wise ones bound to her by the knowledge of Desain's death by one power. Outside, she instructs a maiden to bury the Seanchan deep so none of the others know about him. And eventually the other wise ones start emerging from the barn, talking in small groups, no doubt speculating about where the other septs could be, as is so often the case. Savannah continues through the trees into a large field where she starts to hear the ringing of anvils and the sound of livestock being slaughtered. The Jumai sept had more time to prepare for departure than the others, so they brought flocks from Cairhien and added to them here. So they're building up a pretty considerable force here. So she's got all the wise ones, they had more time to prepare, so they brought supplies and stuff with them, including livestock. I think she's planning on sort of like setting up a base of operations here. We see many tents and a large manor house painted to look like a tinker's caravan. It's like a wooden manor house, but it's painted a bunch of bright colors. In Cairhien, the stone buildings had not impressed Sevanna, but this large wooden house she found super impressive. Just like can't fathom how many trees it must have taken to build this thing. So obviously in the waste, rocky caverns and cities carved out of rock were big as well. So Cairhien didn't impress her. But this big wooden house is like, whoa, look at this.
Jinka house.
Airbnb cabin.
One guy, Shane, that used to be the lord of this estate's son, had told the Shaido they would be hunted down by, as Sevanna quotes, children, obviously meaning the children of the light, but Sevanna had no idea what he meant. So hunted down by children, no less. Not that the White Cloak stood much of a chance against Aiel anyway, but hey. Sevanna overhears the wise ones behind her say, we must find out how many Aes Sedai fight for the Seanchan. But Rial says it doesn't matter. They won't attack unless we attack first. Remember what happened at Dumai's Wells? They do not understand the difference between the Seanchan, Damane, and Aes Sedai. So Riel is saying, remember we attacked with these wetlanders at Dumai's Wells, and they didn't do anything until we attacked. So the Seanchan won't either. Gross miscalculation. Sean-Chan have no such compunction, or what do you call it?
That's the word I was thinking.
No doubts. Mira cautions Rial, reminding her that 23 Wise Ones and 10,000 spears died that day, but Sevanna chimes in and places that lost squarely at Rand's feet. We had the Aes Sedai beaten until he joined their ranks. The Ashaman turning your people into like blood mist had a big part to play in that.
Also, when Rand joined the fight, he started killing Aes Sedai.
Yeah.
Not you guys.
He wasn't focused on any
He was helping you in the beginning.
Wild ones.
Totally.
Wise ones.
But this is Sevanna again trying to just put steel into their backbone. She's trying to get them to like stop being so afraid. They're joined by one of the brotherless, or Meridin, who comes to the Wise Ones asking for judgment. The Jumai are telling the brotherless that they can't have their share of the fifth because they're not Jumai. But he suspects it's because they outnumber the Jumai, so there will be much less left for the Shaido Jumai sept. This Meridin, Kinuan, he's around later when Fail is rescued in Malden. Fail kills this Aiel man.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know it was him, but I remember she killed somebody now, an Ailman.
I don't think it's this guy, or I'm creating a callback for myself here, but I don't think it's this guy that tries to romance Fail, but because I want to say his name was Roland or something like that, something with an R. But anyway, he's there and Fail kills him.
Perrin kills that Roland guy.
Yeah, with the hammer in the head, I think.
Yeah.
Sevanna palms him off to the other Wise Ones to make a judgment, and they seem surprised, but they go off with Kinuan to make their call. Now that Sevanna is alone, she can go fondle the oath rod that she has got tucked away under her belt. She daydreams of making the Wise Ones obey her using that rod, and maybe even Rand. If Kadar lied about the travel boxes, maybe he had lied about this working for only women too. No. Then we jump to everyone's least favorite Aes Sedai, Galina. She's naked in a leather sack, thumbs tied to her toes, covered in some kind of burning powder suspended over hot coals. This is punishment for her slapping a Wise One, Belinde, who is sitting in front of her, shielding her now. Galina wails in pain and frustration. Galina even says, light it burned. That she called on the light measured her desperation. Weird. Seems so like totally uncharacteristic. Is there something redeemable about Galina? Is RJ trying to like...
No. Let's not go down there.
Okay.
Don't even open that can of worms.
My last comment is, say it isn't so, RJ. Even in her misery, she's thinking about how she'll get revenge on Belinde and settles on cooking her on a spit to begin with. That's the first thing she's going to do, like cook her until her juices run into the fire, and that's just the start of it. But eventually they let her down, and Sevanna is there. Sevanna tells Galina that if she swears to obey in all things, she can be made Gaishen and no longer be Datsang. Galina agrees and immediately swears to obey, but Sevanna tells her she must swear an oath on this. She pulls out the oath rod and I think she tosses it on the ground. Galina instantly recognizes it as an oath rod, but clearly not the one from the White Tower. It's interesting how this rod is so similar to the one in the White Tower, but marked with a numeral for 111 instead of the numeral 3. So people in the tower, Galina think that the 3 on the oath rod was for the 3 oaths, but it's not. It's just like it's just one of
the third one
hundreds. Yes.
I differ there because 3 written
Batch
as
numbers.
a numeral and 111 could represent 3 if it's written 111 could represent
111.
But it's not written 1111. It's written in Age of Language numeral or old time. Age of Language.
Age of Language.
Wow.
Age of Legends. Is it the old time?
Old tongue.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like their numbering system, whatever it would be. That's quite a big system to have.
Roman numerals.
Like 111. Okay, and the Roman numerals make sense.
Which they also were not using.
Yes, they were. You can't prove it.
They just had many of these. What do they call them? Binding rods in the Age of Legends. Interestingly, this one is from the cache in Ibudar. Thalion snuck it out before the battle with the Golem and Ispin's capture, and she passed it on to Samael, who gave it to the Shaido. So this thing has traveled.
I wonder what else they found there.
Yeah.
The dark friends in that cache.
Because they carried some stuff off before they were...
Definitely some table legs.
thwarted.
Like, no doubt.
Everyone got table legs. Everyone gets table legs. So enter Therava, Galina's worst nightmare, and Sevanna's for that matter. Galina thinks to herself that Therava and Somarin are stronger than any woman in the tower.
Significant.
Really?
Yeah. Sevanna is surprised that the Wise Ones judged in Kinuin's request so quickly, but Tion and Rial say it was a simple decision and they judged in favor of the Meridin despite Sevanna's apparent attempt to sway them in the other direction. So they're actively smearing Sevanna's reputation in front of other people. Therava steps in and she tells Sevanna that Galina has no honor to shame, and if she wants to break her, to give her to Therava, and she'll swear all the oaths to obey with no need for Kadar's toy, as she puts it. The Wise Ones start arguing about Galina, and Galina, who in desperation to avoid her tormentor Therava's attention, dives for the oath rod lying on the ground. It represents a way to stay out of Therava's grasp. As she clutches it, Therava steps on her hand and says that if Galina is going to swear on it, it will be to obey all the Wise Ones there. So after a bit of a standoff, Sevanna and Therava agree that Galina will obey them all, but equal first among them, Sevanna and Therava. Galina swears, thinking another oath rod can remove this oath later. She swears on the light and a hope of salvation, neither of which she believes in anymore. But she feels the oath settle on her and she screams. Therava orders her to be quiet and she instantly clams up. So she swore an oath to obey, so her scream is cut short because she has to obey. The oath rod compels her. Therava tests it further by commanding her to be honest about planning violence against the Wise Ones, the punishment for which is to be killed like an animal. And Galina utters the admission, and Therava is convinced. She tells Galina she will be Gaishain after all, at which she smiles. Galina doesn't know why, but we know, like Therava wants her to be her own Gaishain. Therava was disappointed when she was made Datsang. Therava then orders her to behave meekly and to obey even a child. And then the clincher. Galina will not channel without permission from one of the Wise Ones. Belinda releases her shield and Galina is hollow. The source is right there and she is completely incapable of touching it. Sevanna doesn't like this at all, but Therava quickly tells her how things are. As Sevanna keeps pointing out, she speaks as clan chief, and the Wise Ones have decided the clan chief needs a Wise One advisor like all clan chiefs do, and that Therava would be Sevanna's advisor. Sevanna can see there's no way out of this one, and she asks Saori, so what do you advise? Therava says the Shornchan are too close, and they must move north. Your Wetlander friend has scattered us to the wind. They love reminding Sevanna about Kadar being her friend. They must find other septs and reunite. And Sevanna agrees, but suggests that they move east instead of north. It's also away from the Shornchan, and the lands to the east are in turmoil. So from Amadisia east to Altara and not north to Gildan. But surprise, Sevanna, the Shornchan are already in Altara as well. So, so suck it.
So is Saladar.
But that's empty now.
Oh yeah, they left.
They're up in Gildan.
Haven't heard from them in ages, eh?
It's coming. When Therava makes a thinly veiled threat to Sevanna, Sevanna reminds them that she made arrangements that if anything happened to her, they would all be left to the vultures. Galina clings to this small hope as something, even if she doesn't know what it is. Out of nowhere, snow clouds roll in from the north, and Therava makes Galina explain what it is. When she hears it is snow, she laughs. Apparently the Aiel that chased down Laman said the snow was dangerous, but this couldn't harm a mouse. So obviously the Aiel that came back from the Aiel War, we're talking about snow and like how hectic it is and like how hard it is to fight in it. And then Therava looks at this like weird little snow flurry. It's like, this is nothing. Therava, you are
settle down.
You're showing your ass a bit. Yeah, you don't know. Yeah. Sevanna offers to take Galina to get her whites, but Therava stops her and says she'll take care of it. Sevanna, as clan chief, has a long day and night ahead of her planning for their departure to the east. You know, like, you've got things to go to. I'll take care of Galina. You go busy yourself with preparing to move the sept. As Therava leads Galina away, Galina is panicking. The falling snow melts like Galina's hopes. In your face, Galina, Caspan. The end.
Yeah. My 3-word summary was, fuck you, Galina. End of story.
Your 3-word opinion.
Yeah, it is a pretty big fuck you to Galina. She is up against it now.
I mean, you got to think about it. You know, when Sevanna is the good choice, like how bad Therava must be.
The lesser of the two evils is Sevanna.
Yeah.
The fact that she screams when the oath rod curse settles on her. Because for her it's a curse, not so much a binding oath. Why is she screaming? But because she realized that it's actually maybe stronger than what she thought the oath rod was, or is this an experimental one that...
No, there is physical discomfort with swearing the oaths. Even the Aes Sedai that swear the oaths, I mean, it does constrict on their skin and stuff, right? Like there is physical discomfort. I don't know that it would cause a scream. I know that removing an oath, so like when the Black Archer sisters swear new oaths, they scream when the old oaths are overwritten. So I don't know if maybe some of that's happening here.
Is that it because it's overwriting?
That's
not a first time
the black.
Because that was with like,
Maybe.
is she in pain because she's thinking like against? Because I question her, like, tell us if you've been plotting harm against me, and she's like, yeah, against all of you. Like, please just don't punish me for my sins, type of thing.
Well, she has to obey at that point because the oath rod compels her to be honest about it.
But yeah, the scream just threw me. Like,
Yeah, I'm thinking now maybe it's got something to do with it overwriting the Black Ajah, because when they swear oaths to the Black Ajah, they do it on an oath rod as well, right?
yeah,
I think so.
It's not just, I think they take the oaths pretty seriously.
They do. It's the whole thing about that, like Perrin, until the hour of my death, I will speak no of none of our. And then so Perrin drinks poison. No, she'll be dead in an hour, and she can say all the stuff. She can betray her Black Archer.
All the beans. Yeah.
There's a chapter coming up. Let's put a pin in this until it happens, where the continued questioning of Ispen by Van Dien and Elyas makes them think that she actually can't betray any of the Black Ajah schemes. And I think it might be related to an oath. So as a callback, I'll go look up what the Black Ajah oaths are and see exactly what the behavior of like re-swearing an oath, and if this oath overwrites some of them. Because you can have multiple oaths sworn. As long as, if two oaths contradict each other, I've read, I think it's in the companion, it says that the person swearing the oath stops breathing until one of the oaths is removed.
Oh, wow.
Crikey.
Yeah. So I'll go do a bit of reading and see what's happening there.
Well, Willie can just tell us, right? You're a Dark Friend. Don't you know the oaths for the Dark One? No?
Yeah, but he can't channel.
Well, Willie's... Oh, but he can't tell us. It's because he's been bound to the oath rod. Of course. That was the first one. You will not talk about Black Club.
What else? I've said my piece in my summary.
There's lots of
I
fun
said my
characters, just
all I'm
glorious things and people we love to reflect on and just read about. But it's rough. Like her not wanting to be handed over to Therava, number one, and then getting I'll swear any oath, to an oath rod coming out, and then so desperate to swear an oath to not be in a sack anymore that she lunges at it, and then Therava just like steps on her hand, but more so the oath rod, and crushes her fingers underneath it. Just all of it, the treatment there. You feel sorry for her, like it's.
No, you don't.
I won't go that far.
A little bit.
What?
If anything, I kind of like Therava.
I don't like it. A Shaido
I'm going to leave now.
who can channel that strongly is...
One's
I
on the Rava side and the other's on Galina's. What?
Therava has two cool things counting in her favor. She hates Sevanna and she hates Galina.
enemy of my enemy is
The
my
enemy
friend.
of my enemy of my enemy.
Wow. Enemyception over there.
Two of my enemies.
Of the enemy.
Double my friend.
Double friends. Yes, there you go. That's
And
what
she's
you
the
like.
one that eventually is like, fuck this wetlander bullshit. I'm going back to the Isle Waste. Galina, on your bike, let's go. And I always had this idea that Therava was really old, but I don't think she is. I think she is just formidable. There's a little description of her, and Galina is like genuinely terrified of her. She holds all the other wise ones in contempt, but Therava, she is genuinely scared of. And it's just like great that's the wise one that she ends up with, and probably serves out all her days in her service.
Yeah. Does she just eventually die?
Well, you don't know. The last you hear about
No,
Galina, she's
I know, but I
backing
mean,
up.
just forget about the fact that you can channel and you can feel the sorcerer. You just give up the will to live with all of that, like, and being a shine to her.
Well, she's not stilled And I bet you Therava, being as savvy as she is, at some point orders her not to kill herself.
Yeah.
Can't off yourself, can't run away, you can't do any of this shit. You just have to obey me because the
Just be
obey
my little
rod
pet.
has been programmed on you. It's stuff going there. And then Therava can probably learn how to heal at some point as well, so she can torture her and heal her, and then torture her again and heal her again. And then she's so tired she
That's
sleeps
some
for a week.
deep, dark friend thoughts going there,
That
Vinny.
is some real dark friend talk.
Perspectives are plenty.
Yeah, perspectives. This is what this episode's about.
Have you guys picked favorite moments?
Always do my
did,
favorite
actually.
moments.
Ah, okay. Joe? You so proud
It
of
was
your
in
favorite
it was
moment?
in my chapter, and I didn't even talk about it because I wanted to keep it as a favorite moment.
Nice.
But there's a scene when Perrin and Galina go up to go and see what the commotion's about, and Perrin's about to push through the crowd, and Galina just screams, "Out of the way, you mangy hounds!" And they all split. And Perrin thinks, I wonder what would happen if I said that to the Two Rivers men. I'd probably get a punch in the nose. And then he goes, fuck it, I'm going to give it a try anyway. We'll see what happens if I call them mangy hounds.
Oh, I don't think you would.
No, he said he's gonna. Like,
No, he says it. I don't know.
I've got the.
He's got it in him.
I think that's brave talk.
That's-
Brave internal monologue.
Perrin wondered what would happen if he called the Two Rivers men mangy hounds. Probably earn him a punch in the nose. It might be worth a try. That's his last sentence.
Non-committal.
Yeah, fuck it. Let's go.
It might be worth a try.
It might be worth a try. He'll pull it out one day.
Let's see. Put
See
a
what
pin in it.
happens.
How many
Yeah.
pins we have?
All the pins.
How about you, Will?
Yes, selfishly, it comes out of my chapter as well. There were many moments to
Not
consider.
selfish.
Yeah, there was the Perrin moment, queenly moments, but Baller playing his hand for the first time is my best. It was just great. Like dropping all of it, and throughout all of these unfolding chapters, all the news is verified by other parties, and every little you can see the light bulbs going up, or Perrin cocking his head like a dog hearing a tuna. Ooh.
Yeah. And then Perrin sort of like, when he hears the confirmation, he's like, oh, maybe I should ask him about more stuff. And we're going, yes, Perrin, ask Baller everything.
And then later he says, maybe I should shout at Perrin. She needs shouting at. No, Perrin, no.
Not that one, not that one.
Not that one. Maybe you should ask Baller about Saldane woman. He might get a second opinion.
Oof, I wonder what Baller knows about women.
If he knows something
He
about
might
him.
know.
Just statistics. He's got stats.
Profiles.
Yeah.
My favorite moment this time is the same as Billy's.
Really?
Absolutely. I love that.
Straight.
I love Baller like showing, like without being overt about it, just saying, this is what I think. Just, maybe consider this. Because Perrin sort of says in an offhanded way, I'd rather if you could tell me like something about the White Cloaks or the Shawnchan or where Massima is. And Baller's like, well, actually.
Well, hold my beer. In a very
Strap in,
not
sir.
hold my beer way, he does it. Like, okay.
Yes.
And then especially he would have heard Perrin's name in the discussions, I would assume, quite a bit. So Perrin isn't a new person to him. He knows how he has done stuff to the White Cloaks. And he's like, okay, you are a bunch of dogs, and here I'm with a wolf. This is the person that I need to actually, give a leg up against this WC toilets that roam the
His
landscape.
water closets.
Yeah.
He's riding water closets. Any honorable mentions? I've got two. Elyas.
Perrin.
Yes.
Oh,
Elyas.
more Perrin for me.
Yeah.
Perrin's conversation with Alliandre and him just fucking about and fumbling around and her
Awesome.
misinterpreting it, I thought was cool.
So good.
But what Elyas, of course, Elyas is back.
Of course, and how he snuck up on Gaul, and then how Gaul made it known to the maidens because he says it out loud specifically so they can hear. It's not like overheard. He announces it, and then how the maidens seem to respect that a lot. And then despite Gaul being like they're always like shitting on Gaul, but in this thing they're like, okay, yeah, well done. And then Therava putting Sevanna in her place.
Yeah, that goes without saying.
Yeah, not even the Galina thing, the Sevanna thing.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Where Gaul does that announcement that Elyas snuck up on him, it was almost that he had toe, that he had to, like it was, he could have kept quiet about it, but he had to. And then, I mean, I think he would have much rather preferred it not be maidens, maybe a bunch of stone dogs, because they could think like, oh, mate. It's don't let the maidens hear about this one, but it was a bunch of maidens. So
I wonder if they know about Elyas or something, because the reaction that Gaul has after Elyas sneaks up on him, coughs behind him, and Gaul turns around, he looks like he's going to murder him, and then he bursts out laughing. Like, and
real humor, man.
It's so weird. But
I doesn't know him. Because he says, like, he looks at the yellow eyes. There was a mention of that in that chapter. And Perrin thinks it's just like another thing he takes for wetlanders. Like, some of them have yellow eyes, Not that he recognizes Elyas.
No, it was just like... the shame of being snuck up on, I would have thought Gaul would sort of be like, lower his eyes, almost like, okay, Elyas, you snuck up on me, sort of like be more almost respectful, but the laughing is what got me. Like he just bursts out laughing. Okay, maybe he's just laughing at the craziness of a wetlander of all people sneaking up on him. You got me good.
Yeah.
Now do we dance?
It's first to admit it.
Unless Elyas did a whole stint in the waste for 10 years, like trying to run away, built up a reputation, did a bit of side work for them, and then buggered off.
No, that was Jane. That was Jane Fastrider. What if him and Elyas don't know each other?
Oh, I wonder. What's his name again? Noel.
Noel.
Let's see if they meet. Okie dokie. To our listeners, send us your favorite moments, your questions, your answers to our questions, or just say hello. You can tweet us at Blood and Ash Pod, or go to our website at bloodandashespodcast.com, where you can leave us a message or even a 90-second voicemail, which we can play on the show. And then, if you're able, leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Thank you kindly. Once you've done all of that, you can prepare for next time on Blood and Ashes, where we will cover chapter 12 through 15.
Ooh, Martin's not doing chapters next time.
Ooh, he is not.
Double bagger.
12 is new alliances. 13 is floating like snow. 14 is message from the Mihail. And chapter 15 is stronger than written law.
Oh, I like that. 14. Chapter 14 sounds good.
There's some cool shit coming up, Joe. Like I said, page turner. Can't stop reading.
Rad.
Right, so that's all for next time. But then until we do that, I shall say to you, sleep well and wake.
Adios.
Goodbye, you mangy hounds.